Good evening, folks. We are live and up and running. So let me get everything switched over and we will go ahead and get started with the launch party for Titanium Forest.
Yay!
All right, we'll be using the media share template. Welcome in, folks. Oh, I see first time chat from the Fourth Pale Rider. Welcome to the stream. Before we kick things off, I'll kind of do a little bit of an intro of what we're doing here and introduce my co-host for today. And then we will get started taking a look at this project, which I've been talking about for a very long time. I'm pretty excited to
Very
share it with all of you
excited.
folks. So first and foremost, my guest today is Mycelia Corpus, one of my VTuber
Uh-huh.
peers. Would you like to introduce yourself to the chat for folks who may not have heard of you before?
Sure, I am Mycelia Corbus. I am also a VTuber. I do a lot of different art, and I was asked to for a commission, and I was like, "Hell yeah, let me do it, please!" And we're here. Go, Mycelia. You're gonna embarrass me.
Yeah, so just to kind of explain the background a little bit, I asked Mycelia to do the album art for this project. So you're going to see her art featured front and center for the majority of the video. And it's pretty different kind of approach to a lot of the art that I've had for my album so far. Definitely probably the most complex. And so you'll see the art. What we'll do here on the stream today is a similar format to what we've done in the past, where we'll take a look at each track one by one in the YouTube video, which I got pulled up on screen here. We'll talk a little bit about the music process and some of the art stuff that I made for each of the tracks. And as things come up related to the art itself, I'll definitely hand the mic off to Mycelia to explain, some of the stuff that went into that. And then once we get through all of the tracks, we're going to switch over to a different video that I got queued up here on YouTube that is behind the scenes footage, which I've never done for any of these projects. And it's going to be a compilation of some drawing footage from Mycelia and some concept work that we discussed. So we'll watch the behind the scenes video and then we'll get a chance to talk about that. And I think it'll be a really interesting look for you folks to see what went into the whole process for the development of the art on this commission.
I'm excited. I had a lot of trouble keeping it secret. It's like I can't talk about it, but I want to talk about it
How many times did you work
every
on this
time.
on your streams? Because I know you do
Um,
drawing streams, yeah.
I can take a look real fast. I want to say pretty solid. I think for about the past month, where every I think Tuesday and Wednesday I was working on it, if not at least once a week for like this past month.
Okay, so your community would have seen you slowly kind of chipping away and working on it over time.
Oh yeah, they saw it up until I had done all the flats, and then like the real intense rendering, I was like, I can't, I have to focus.
Gotcha. But they
And
didn't know
didn't
what it's
stream
for.
that. Yeah. Well, they had no idea what it was for. I was
Okay.
like, yep, this is a commission. They requested to keep it anonymous. I can work on it on stream, so you guys will get to see that. And I was very careful with it.
Oh, no problem. I see Red Dragon had popped in. I know he's on UK time, so he's heading off to bed.
Oh,
But thanks for popping in, Red Dragon. The archive footage for the launch party, as well as the actual video we're watching here, videos, will be up on YouTube shortly after we're done. So feel free to check it out if you want to see what we talked about and what went into the project. Oh, yeah, I see Capri Sun's here. Iconic. Glad you folks had stopped by.
yes.
And I think we are good. I was looking at doing one last volume tweak, but I'm trying to figure out where the option is to tweak it in our call after I started sharing. I think it'll be
You
okay.
can actually right click on my icon in Discord, and then you can change user volume.
Let's see that in the call itself, or in just like
Um,
the regular message DM list.
Oh, you may have to pull it back up again if you've minimized it. So if you go back to the call. Hi, hi.
Okay, I think I got it. I think we're all right, folks. So let us know if you need to tweak anything with the audio balance. We're messing with it before the stream, but I think it is good to go. What matters is
Yes.
that you folks can hear the YouTube video. So also let me know if the playback on YouTube is too quiet. Without further ado, are you ready to get started?
Yes.
So I usually don't say anything while it's playing. You don't have to mute or anything, but once it's done, I'll pause it and then we can talk about each track by track. All right,
Okay.
then let's get started, folks. This is the Titanium Forest release. Let's have a look. I, I've been trying to get better as we do these release party streams.
No, you
Pausing it
did good.
pausing it before it gets to the next track so we can talk about it.
Yay! Ah,
So,
that's catchy.
so just a little bit of background for folks who might not have heard me talk about this before, as far as what these tracks and these music projects are supposed to be for in general. So maybe since right around halfway through the first year when I started VTubing, I started learning about creating music digitally. And I'll kind of explain a little bit about how the music creation process goes next. But these tracks are all part of releases that I put out periodically every couple months. And they're meant to be assets for other content creators and streamers to use. So this project and any of the other ones that I've released are meant to be royalty free background music that people can use for streams. You can use them for YouTube videos, any sort of content. They're just free assets for people to use. And I'll mention it again at the end as far as where you can find it, but my stuff is streaming on Spotify and Tidal. You can download the tracks individually for free on Bandcamp. And all the stuff is linked in the
Ooh.
video that we're watching right now. That'll go live on YouTube after we're done. And so, just kind of for anybody who creates content, these things are out there for you to use. I just ask that if you put it into your content, just credit me somewhere. But other than that, you don't have to ask permission. There's no copyright or DMCA stuff attached to this, which is something I wanted to mention for folks again who haven't heard me talk about it. I know you're on YouTube, Mycelia. I don't know if you've ever run into problems with copyright before, but
I have like a ton. There's a unfortunately there's a huge reason why I have um for when I stream or do anything like that, I have two different audios that I play. I have that are playing at the same time, but live um watchers can hear the live music and then the VOD watchers can hear the VOD music. So there's non-copyright free. So it's a thing that's really hard to find, and sometimes they're not the most catchy, and you have to hunt really hard to find the stuff that's really catchy that you're like, oh yeah, that fits my vibe, and I don't mind listening to it.
I did see we have a hydrate. This is a
Ooh,
redeem for everybody. Drink some water.
take a big old chippy sip.
Yeah, and so the reason why I mention it is because every so often when I put together a video that is either a teaser for a project or the compilation videos like we're watching now, sometimes I get copyright claimed by the automation that thinks I'm using someone else's music.
Yes.
And I have had to appeal twice so far in the last year for stuff that I've
Oof.
made and recorded without
You're
sampling
like,
or
no,
anything else.
that's mine. You're like, no, that's mine.
And basically, the companies just don't respond in 30 days and their claim gets dropped.
Yeah. I've had it happen a couple of times where it's like background music that the system thinks is something else, but I'm like, That's not even the same track that's playing at this point. That's completely different."
Hey, I see we have TGI Ramen jumping on the chat, one of my fellow streamer peers. What's up,
Ooh.
Ramen? Welcome to the stream. We are checking out the latest release, Titanium Forest.
Hi, hi.
And another thing, just on the topic of copyright, because I can complain about it all day, but the reason why I mentioned it is if you use my tracks in content either on stream or in a YouTube video or anything, and you see a copyright claim for that track, please reach out to me, DM me, hit me on Twitter or wherever, and let me know because it means someone's created a fraudulent claim.
Yeah.
There were,
Or it could be the automated system just processing it through and saying, "Oh, this matches this," and tagging
yes,
it.
yes, which I think has only happened for one of the tracks I released last year. I know because I had to
Mhm.
dispute it, but I haven't had anybody tell me that they got pinged for using it as well. But either way, let me know because especially if it's a company claiming ownership of the song, not like claiming it's someone else's song that's close, then
Yeah.
I got to go and track that down because there's a real problem with people taking stuff that's not actively copyright claimed and creating their own
And
ownership claim for it, which is incredibly scummy.
yep, yep. Oh God, that's so scummy.
And we don't play that here. That's entirely against the point of creating free assets for people.
Yes.
And so to talk a little bit about the music process again for folks who might not have heard me talk about this before, the two instruments I use to do the majority of the tracks that you hear in my music releases. A lot of the earlier stuff that I put together when I was first starting out is a mix of beatbox sounds and some other things kind of put together, but it's all used with a device called an RC505 loop station. And I don't know if you've ever seen someone doing like live looping in a video, a music performance, or on stage. But the loop station is an incredibly powerful tool that allows you to capture audio and then loop it, as the name would suggest, in sync with five different concurrent tracks, and you can kind of layer on top of them. And
And they can
so,
get really complex.
very, very much so. It's really popular and a big part of the beatbox scene, both just creatively and competitively, with things like loop station battles,
Hmm.
which is kind of how I got into it. Just being really interested
Ooh.
in learning what these people were doing. But over the last year, I'd say year or so, I've integrated a synthesizer that I inherited from someone who was upgrading theirs. And so I have this gigantic Yamaha, I think it is. I'm looking over here. It's a massive synthesizer that I have hooked up to the loop station. And I use that to generate a lot of the instruments and sounds that are captured and looped by the hardware. And then after I sort of compose the track through the different looped portions, I hook it up to my computer, pull everything off, and basically record the track live and then mix it and edit it into the final part that goes into the release. And I'm still kind of learning the ins and outs of mixing. I wouldn't say I'm the best at it, but that's been kind of the whole process up till now. And so this particular project, as you folks might have guessed from one, the art that Mycelia made, and also just the style of the first song, Mass Production Model, this whole release is very kind of electronic and futuristic in its theming and style. And so I guess I would ask for you, are you like a big electronic music listener at all?
I am actually. I when I first started streaming, I had a huge playlist that was a bunch of different like electro techno stuff, and like lived on that for a super long time until chat was like, can we have a little variety? It's like, but I love this stuff. I was like, okay, I'll split it up so we can listen to something else live.
That's pretty understandable. Ramen says, "God bless, we love EDM." Yeah,
Yes.
I've been listening to electronic music ever since it kind of blew up in the mid late '90s. Again, I'm very old. My community knows this, but seeing things like techno, EDM, electronic music sort of take off was really interesting to kind of observe and watch. And obviously, the scene evolved with like club music, house music, trance. I'm a big fan of drum and bass. We may or may not be seeing at least one track in part of this release that's drum and bass like.
Ooh, exciting.
We've had a release before, it was from last year, that was a more chill, ambient, down tempo type of release. That was the Neon Night Lounge, and that one was still very electronic, but it was more again mellow and chill. So I always tell my community that one of my favorite electronic genres is trip hop, and I really wanted to create a release that was influenced by a lot of like old school trip hop from back in the day. And that was a big challenge, and I want to do another one of those because I've learned kind of a lot. But thinking of artists like Portishead and Sneaker Pimps, and some more contemporary ones, more Chiba or Massive Attack, I kind of trying to channel that into that one. And so for this one, I'm thinking more towards a little bit of. I like Daft Punk a lot, but I don't think I can emulate their sound. But they definitely inspired a lot of the kind of electronic flavor that we'll see in a little bit
I
of
mean,
stuff here.
they didn't always start out at Daft Punk, so you could get there.
Ramen says Raku breakcore when. That's a that's a good idea. I have to learn more about breakcore because I don't know it as a genre too well. But yeah, it's definitely an idea. Capri Sun says Mezzanine by Massive Attack is real good, and intro music for House MD. Yes, the album I think of when I think of trip hop from that era would be Mezzanine by Massive Attack. There's a bunch of tracks in there that are super like cool, chill out music, and like the influence of like hip hop beats and all sorts of stuff blended with jazz, like acid jazz, mellow kind of bluesy type stuff. Very fascinating.
Yes.
Fourth Pale Rider says, I grew up on hard and jump style next to my massive metal addiction, of course. That's pretty valid. I know I've talked about it a bit with folks here on stream before. I listen to a lot of music in general. I'm a big music person. The only thing I don't listen to is country. It's a very long story
Same.
as to why, but I'm a big rock and metal fan too, and I have not really come up with a good way to compose metal music using these instruments yet. When I released the Halloween project back in October, which was Blood Moon Rites, that's the first one I've
Hmm.
done that has more of a rock kind of flair to it. But those Halloween releases tend to be more dark and experimental. And I kind of mixed in some styles of rock this time, me a little bit of industrial, trying to learn. But like metal itself is something I wish I knew how to play guitar. Otherwise, I'd be hooking that stuff in and putting stuff like that together too.
Give me one moment. Hang on, I have to step out real fast.
Oh, no problem. Roman says, I love music and slowly listening to certain country songs. Yeah, we've had some pretty good conversations about music, Ramen, especially when we were in those long car rides in Canada. But yeah, country music's the only thing I'm allergic to, and part of it is being exposed to it for a really a long time ago. But I guess before we get ready to move on to the next track, we won't be taking huge discussion breaks in between each one. But this first one, I wanted to set the stage for the release. One thing you'll see in the upper right corner of the video is this orange mech looking pixel based image here. So, just like some of the other releases where there's kind of like flavor images that go with each track, each one of the tracks in Titanium Forest is going to be accompanied with a mecha pixel type design that's going to pop up when the track switches. And some folks might have seen me working on those on stream, doing some of the pixel art drawing stuff that we've done. But I figured it would be pretty thematically on point for an electronic kind of futuristic type of release to have some kind of similar track art to go with it. So it's going to be pixel based mechs. And that was pretty fun. I want to definitely get better at kind of rendering like the mecha style in a pixel format. And you're going to see
And
the
pixel's hard to do too, so.
yeah. I'm a pencil and paper artist by trade, but maybe I don't know, say like 4 years ago, I started learning how to draw things pixel based in Photoshop,
Ooh.
and been kind of getting better at it slowly. And like folks on the streams here have seen me draw Pokemon sprites. For have you ever seen or played Infinite Fusion?
I have not.
Oh yeah, so Pokemon Infinite Fusion is a free fan game that anybody can Google and download and play right now on your PC device. And it's basically a custom built ROM hack of the Fire Red original game. I think that's what it is. I never played the original it's based off of, but the whole gimmick to Infinite Fusion is you can catch Pokemon and fuse them together to create new Pokemon with
Ooh.
new types and custom hand drawn sprites by the community.
Oh. I think I might have seen like drawings that people have done for it, but I've never actually played it myself.
It's really cool. I've been kind of off and on with the Pokemon franchise over the years. They've kind of not held my interest for a long time, but Infinite Fusion has been fascinating to play through. Just to go through what the original kind of Kanto area arc, but now it's like you can basically fuse any two Pokemon together or the Pokemon with themselves and create new ones. And there's a bunch of new content they've kind of added and stuff. And then they've added the Johto region as well, which I haven't gotten to in my playthrough on stream, but very fascinating. So
Oh.
maybe a year or so ago started getting into drawing sprites for the game. And so there's a handful that I've done that are in the game now.
Oh, damn.
And I told my chat if I ever see them in my playthrough and they pop up in like an encounter or a battle, then I have to give subs. But it's been a really interesting.
Oh, that's a gamble though.
Yeah, but then the more I do, the more likely that is to happen. But that's what has been kind of interesting, and also learning like the pixel art style. That's why I mentioned it. But yeah, if you like
Nice.
an interesting experience, I definitely recommend checking out Infinite Fusion. It's fun. It's very unique and
I might have
fresh.
to.
It also comes built in with randomizer functions in the game itself. So if you want to
Oh, so you don't have
randomize,
to do any mods.
nope, if you want to randomize the spawns for everything in the game, you just click one setting. It does that. It'll randomize
Nice.
trainer lineups. So everything is different. It's definitely a good time. I know a lot of my peers were playing it before I gave it a shot. I guess to sort of start off before we move on to the next one, we can kind of sprinkle in little bits about the album art itself, since that's your department. Is there anything you want to kind of
Oh,
lead off on as far as ideas? Because you didn't hear the tracks before we
no.
started the commission. That's one thing I need to mention to folks. Most of the time when I work with an artist, they don't get to hear the tracks before. So it's kind of a surprise when we actually do the launch party. But also, it's a little bit challenging because I have to kind of explain what I'm looking for. But
Yes. Yeah, I think you gave me a list of like the song names, but that was it. And I was like,
mhm.
oh, ooh, nice, a challenge.
Yeah, so just kind of just set the stage for what I asked my Celia to do when I started talking to her. Is just I said we're looking at like an electronic, futuristic type of release. So trying to create a scene that is based around that was basically the point. And then we started throwing ideas back and forth about what was going to be in the scene, what characters or what was going to be the focus. And that'll probably come into play more with the behind the scenes stuff so people can see the concept development.
Yes.
But it definitely sets this kind of like futuristic post battle scene, which I think turned out really well.
I was very happy with it. There were points though, I was like, oh no, I feel like I'm not doing it well enough, and then it came together.
Yeah, there was a lot of moving parts, which we'll see after we get through the songs themselves. But yeah, again, definitely worth it. It's a really cool composition. All right, let's move on to the second track, and I'll just skip here. This one is Galactic Voyage. So let's have a listen. So close.
Ooh, I like that one.
So that was Galactic Voyage, and I did see Fourth Player Writers is very chill, loving it. Oh, thanks, folks. Much appreciated. So this one drops the energy a little bit. It's a bit more kind of mellow, but still kind of futuristic and electronic sounding. And one thing I wanted to talk a little bit about, just in case people were wondering, since for the Halloween project we did back in October, there was actually kind of a narrative story that went from track to track, and it kind of follows a bit of a story progression from start to finish.
Hmm.
This one, I didn't really do that so much. I kind of structured things like a progression, but not like a narrative. So it's not like character is going from point A to point B to C, D, and E, and whatnot. It's more kind of just like a journey that's starting in one spot and ending in another. And so, just the kind of rough vision that I had, the first one, mass production model, is a bit more upbeat and has kind of like a bounce to it. To me, that's kind of like the start of the journey from maybe a planet, someone is leaving said planet to go somewhere else. And then this one, Galactic Voyage, as the name would suggest, would be them in space. So they're in transit to wherever they're going, and this is sort of like a bit more down tempo and mellow, just because it's the vast darkness of space.
There's a section in the first Aliens movie that almost reminds me of, but like way happier and way more positive, where in the big opening section where it goes through the ship and you hear like the sounds of the ship and like the consoles make noises and stuff like that as they're turning on. That's what it almost feels like, but like way more positive.
And I'll bet where that's coming from is a really subtle synth effect that's in the back that sounds kind of like a signal bleep that kind of comes and
Yeah.
goes throughout the track. Figuring out how to do that with the presets on the loop station was actually very difficult. It's a filter setting.
Oh.
The way loop stations work, again, I'm not going to get into the technical stuff because people probably don't care, but whenever you have sound that's playing through the loop station, either that's being recorded and saved as a loop or being played back as a track once it's already been captured, there are effects and things you can apply to those sounds either as you're recording them or once everything is playing in real time, like a song effect. And filter is one that I use a lot. There's three different types that change kind of the intensity, but it basically muffles the sound. And the intensity of the effect is driven by an effect knob. It's a big knob on the console of the loop station, and the more you turn it to the right, the more intense the effect is, and opposite way backs the effect off. And so you can play around as you're looping stuff and also playing stuff back for recording. If you want to put like a filter effect on something, you'll see it on some of the stuff that we have playing in these tracks. But you can also tweak the parameters of the effect itself for pretty much all of them. And there's dozens of effects that the instrument has. And there's things like the amplitude and frequency of this distortion on this filter. And if you tweak things the right
Mhm.
way, instead of just muffling it and making it kind of sound like it's muted and drowned out, it takes whatever you're playing and it turns it into like this glitchy signal beep.
Which is so cool.
And I didn't make it up. I learned that effect from somebody else. I just was watching a tutorial and like, hey, if you want to create this glitchy signal sound, you take the filter and you put it at this number, this number, this number, this number, and then it just does that. And so for a lot of
Oh,
electronic stuff where it needs just like a little bit of background effect noise, I've used that before. And depending on which synthesizer instrument you use, it changes how that beep comes out. Something really
ooh.
clean and high will sound like a beeping, like a signal ping or like a radar or a sonar. Something
Hmm.
low or brassy with distortion like a saxophone or like a trumpet will sound more tinny and hollow and like ping around, and like combining the effect of the filter with other things like a delay or a reverb echo, again it just changes the sound again. And so there's practically infinite permutations of effects and instrument combinations when you're using a loop station, and that's what makes it really cool.
Yes.
And so kind of putting all that together, I try not to use the same effect combinations across tracks when I do these
Hmm.
projects. I don't always record them at the same time. In fact, this one was recorded a long time ago on stream. Every once in a while, as my community knows, we do beatbox jam streams every other week or so, where I talk about actual beatboxing mechanics and whatnot, and we practice and go through a lot of explanation for the first half of the stream, and then the second half of the stream is BGM brainstorming with my instruments all set up and me noodling around with all of these things live, and people like throw out ideas and suggestions for the tracks and kind of collaboratively brainstorm ideas for the tracks themselves, and then I take those off stream and finish them up and record them into things and put them in releases,
It's just a
which is
good
pretty
way to
fun.
involve the community.
And some
And
people
it's
get
fun,
to
yeah.
exactly, and some people get to name them too. Like I'll take suggestions for names, and I think he's not here at the moment, but I think Lava King, one of my regulars, named this one, but it was a long time ago. It was last year, and
Oh, dang.
this one had been sitting in the banks waiting to be put onto a release. And I'll have to ask him next time he's here, but I'm pretty sure he named Galactic Voyage, which is, to me, it's appropriate. That's why we stuck with the name.
Right.
But yeah, this is probably one of the more chill tracks on the whole thing. Everything else is going to be a bit higher in energy. And as far as the track art goes, again, you can't see. Oh, there it is. There's my cursor. Up in the upper left, this mecha design is like a mecha, but snake. It's the best way I can describe that one. I like the idea of different concepts being broken up into the tropes you'd see in like a lot of mecha media, but with different spins.
Yes. They always look the best because they're so far out there, but they still have elements that you go, "Oh, I know this. Oh, and I really like this because this reminds me of this other thing, but this is so different and changed from it that it's just so cool."
And that was something to kind of bring it back on topic that you and I talked about when it came to the mecha concept designs for the album art.
Yes,
Because
we had Oh, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
We talked about different things that you had wanted, and we had gone over like Goran Lagan, which was a big setup for this Guyver, Armored Core, and I had also gone through and taken a look at um, Motocross Frontier, I think is what it was, and God,
Macross?
there were so many that I went through and looked at. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay, I know we talked. I think we might have mentioned Ava at some point, which
Yes.
is the one of like the big ones. So I'm always kind of wary about pulling things from that particular series that look really like iconic and noticeable because I don't want to get
Yeah.
sued. But
Yeah, same.
the difference for this one, and folks who were here within the last year for the last electronic project I did, which was called Far Future Days, the album art for that one featured a mecha design based on one of my mascots, the robot Alien Bee, and that one was very kind of more like Gundam inspired. I worked with an artist friend of mine for that one too, and so like a lot of more similar designs what you'd see in like the Gundam franchise. So when I talked to Mycelia about the art for this one, I said it'd be cool to kind of switch up the emphasis to be more like organic looking but still mechanical, if that makes sense.
We went, oh God, I think I sent you 4 designs.
Yep, they're in the behind the scenes. So we'll get to talk about each of
Yes.
the prototype concepts that went into this, because basically for folks who are curious about what inspired the actual mecha design itself, the robot that my character is standing on is based on my red mascot Tenpo, and the overall concept for this mecha was really cool. So I think it'll be interesting to talk through that when we get to the behind the scenes stuff.
Yes.
But usually I'll try and work in things with my mascots, either the community mascots, which are the space bees, or
Hmm.
my mascot, the little red creature Tenpo, just so it's kind of familiar. And it was kind of neat kicking ideas back and forth and seeing what kind of gelled. And you folks will get to see that once we get through the
Yeah.
music. Let's see. Anything else noteworthy you wanted to drop here before we move on to the next one?
Oh, no.
Comic says great stuff with this art. Yeah, I agree. Well, specifically for the album art,
Oh,
the
I like
sprite art was fun to
the
draw, but I feel like yeah, the album art is what's going to be getting all the attention, rightfully
nah, the
so.
sprite arts are great. I love sprite arts. I can't do them very well at all, so I'm in awe.
It does take a little bit of getting used to because I know you're a digital artist and being used to the tools for a lot of drawing, you have to really shift your mindset when you're working with pixels, and it's a little
Oh yeah,
tedious.
it takes too much of a brain shift for me most of the time. I'm like, I can't.
It definitely makes sense. All right, let me make sure I'm in the right spot here. Let's move on to the next track. This is number 3.
Ooh.
This one's got a long name. This one's called Automatotropolis. So let's take a look. All right.
Ooh.
So that was Automatotropolis. And you might be wondering why I just didn't name it Automatropolis. And I said to myself, that would have made more sense. But to me, the name is a little more distinct. It was easy to misspell. So that's the downside.
Hmm.
So, one thing for these tracks that I don't think I've mentioned before that's going to kind of affect how I do this in the future. These tracks normally are, again, about 3+ minutes because they repeat. So the core song is maybe about a minute and a half to like a minute 40-ish, 50-ish seconds, and then it repeats in the middle. And what I've done in the past is just like we're doing here. We listen to the track in its entirety as it shows up on the releases, and then we talk about it and whatnot. Going forward, just to condense down the amount of time spent just watching stuff on stream, I'm going to be using shorter versions of the songs just in the videos. The releases themselves will be the full, like, repeated final version.
Ooh,
But this is
so
mostly
shorter
to,
cuts.
yeah, it's mostly just so that we can kind of move through things a little bit faster. I'm not saying people have short attention spans, but some of the ones that are a little bit longer, I know we're sitting for longer. So just to kind of condense down the stuff for both me and my co-hosts that are jumping on in the future,
Hmm.
when we do these, the tracks that we show off on stream are going to be shorter, basically half the length. And there's a big project that I actually talked about earlier in the week that I'll mention briefly that's scheduled for the spring release right now, which is a sequel project to last year's RPG collection, which was a pretty big project that I worked on where all of the tracks were kind of modeled after older, like, Super Nintendo era RPGs, JRPGs. And so it was 20 tracks of those
Ooh.
types of things. And I collaborated with a friend of mine who animated scenes for each track. And there were 20 of
Ooh,
them.
that's so cool.
It was a big project. It was called The Lost Kingdom. And if you're interested, I would say if you're interested in that style of like video gamey inspired music, it's definitely worth checking out. It was the most ambitious thing that I ever attempted. But I'm working with the same friend of mine again, and we're doing a sequel to The Lost Kingdom that's going to be coming out in the spring of this year. And that project, which I'll be dropping a teaser for in March when I get back from my trip, but that one is called Songs of the Spiral, and the characters that were in the first project were all based off a bunch of my peers out here in the content creator space that are part of our online friend group. And so they had characters that were based off of them that were part of these scenes, and 20 tracks, 20 scenes featuring all these characters in kind of a loose story. And so in this next project for Songs of the Spiral, or SOTS as we're calling it, it's sequel to the quote unquote story featuring same characters and some new ones. And just like last year, it's going to be 20 tracks. But the way we're doing the animations, instead of it being the full 3+ minute full versions, they'll be half as long, but more complex animation, if that makes sense.
Whoa. Oh my God, that's exciting.
Yeah, I've been talking a lot. The artist I'm working with is someone that everyone here knows, is Wazi of the Toxicure conglomerate. That's her brand, but she's a fellow streamer here on Twitch, and she's an animator. She does YouTube videos and other things of different animations, and so she is doing the animation again. And we've been working behind the scenes as all the stuff has been leading up to this release, working on that next one. And I'm really excited for how that project's shaping up. So again, once I get back from my trip, I'm gonna be putting together a teaser with stuff for that, and it should be fun. You folks will be hear me plugging that as it leads up to the release, looking at middle end of April right now.
Ooh.
And I'm really bad at promoting my work, and so we'll be trying to do a bit more of like a social media and a marketing push to kind of get the word out there, not just to get eyes on the project, but for people who are looking for assets, things that they can use in the content creator space.
Yes, that's always a good idea to push for that. People love to share those on.
Pre-Sun says a new Raku project, a sequel, and a new Starbomb. We eating good this year? There's a new Starbomb project? I thought they were done. I'll have to look at that. Those dudes make some pretty entertaining music. Oh, it was announced last year, huh? Very cool. But anyway, I only mentioned it because it's going to be a format change for how we do stuff on stream. And this is the last one that's going to be a bit more of the long form full tracks. And then I think we'll be able to kind of condense things down going forward and make it a little bit easier to digest. But as far as this track itself, we talk a little bit about the music behind Automatatropolis. So this one was kind of inspired by 80s era like pop electronic dance type stuff. And I think the biggest example of that here is some of the synths I chose, the kind of like bouncy, like bassy synths, or something you'd see in a lot of like old like 80s new wave era pop type stuff.
Oh yeah, especially for like cityscapes or anytime they were doing, especially for like like visual media, this would 100% fit right in.
I also tried to mix up the drums. There's a lot of drum kits that are built into my synthesizer, and usually when I start putting the rhythm together for the tracks, I'll pull from the different kits instead of only being the rock kit or only being like the electronic kit. And a lot of the there's a name for the type of synth that, or not synth, snare that was really popular in the 80s, and I forget the name of it, but one particular artist kind of popularized it, and then everyone was using that type of snare. It was like a really kind of like muted like drum machine type snare that was in everything for like the early to mid late 80s. And I kind of wanted to emulate that a little bit here. Also a bit of an effect that I think it shows up on a good majority of the tracks in the release, and it's an effect called the slicer. And
Hmm.
folks who've been on my streams have heard me talk a little bit about how that works, but basically it takes a sound that's input and it cuts it up by a certain preset type of rhythm, either single note rhythms or some have like an alternating pattern of rhythms that repeats. So whatever is being input is cutting up by that amount. And what I do on a lot of the tracks, so kind of towards the middle, there's like a high synth that comes in and it's like a really rapid, like 1 2 3 4 5, 1 2 3 4, it's really fast
Hmm.
upper register one. That's using the slicer to set rhythm. I think it's a 16th note rhythm, and it's cutting up that signal so I can play around with the melody, but I don't have to worry about hitting like the keys at a certain rhythm because I'm just holding down a note, and the preset effect is doing that for me. It's very handy.
Ooh.
And so every time you hear something that sounds really rapid or cut up like that, which you'll see it throughout the entire release, that's using that slicer effect. I need to be careful not to use it all the time, but it's so fun to just take like a high synth melody and then just run it through like a eighth note for something a little bit slower, 16 notes more rapid, and then a 30-second note is just like a machine gun rhythm. And doing things like adding delays and pauses that cause things to bounce around, or even change sound channels so the person, it sounds to their ears like a sound's moving around their headphones.
Hmm.
That's like toggles on the loop station, which is really handy. You could just turn on effects, and all of a sudden it's like panning channels start changing.
Ooh.
Yeah, so you'll see a lot of kind of just combining these different ideas to different effects throughout the different tracks here. Oh, so we got a stretch from Iconic. Very good. Iconic says, about to hit the hour mark, stretch them backs. That's true.
Yes.
I know I can tend to ramble, so I'll try not to do that too much as we go between tracks. There's 10 in total. So this release is a little smaller than some of the other ones I've done, but I think between just talking about the tracks themselves, and I'll mention the sprite that went with this one, and then if you had any other thoughts, then we'll do that before we move on to number 4. But for this one, let's see, where's my cursor? The mecha sprite here is this pink and yellow guy right here. Bit more of kind of like an organic mecha design. This one was kind of inspired a bit by one of the angels in Ava, from the
Ooh.
like the big like tentacle arms. The color palette is a bit more bright and kind of almost pastelish, which I thought would be kind of fun for a large mecha design.
It really makes it pop.
I don't think it'd be practical on the battlefield. It'd be very bad camouflage. But like that ever stopped color paleting in
True.
mecha
Yeah.
anime.
I mean, Gun the original Gundams were very not camouflage colored. So I think you'll be okay.
white. It's like white and really light, bright colors.
Yes. Something
Iconic,
that very much stand out.
Iconic says anything in mecha anime really practical? No.
No.
And that's what makes it so outlandishly entertaining, I suppose. All right. Did you have any other thoughts about either the art or the music before we move on?
Oh, no, I'm good.
Presensus talking about Gundam gonna summon Rira. Oh yeah, he's our resident Gundam expert.
Oh.
Oh, let's keep that centered on screen. Okay, let's move on to track number 4. This next one is called Subatomic. Yeah, I caught it that time. So that was Subatomic. And I didn't mention in the last one, I forgot, but pro- thematic progression wise, that last one was kind of like the subject of the story, kind of touching down and at their first destination, like some other type of city, hence the kind of
Hmm.
city type of urban bouncy energy in the last one. But for this one I kind of thought it was more like maybe the person is moving on or, or traveling to the next destination, going through kind of like stars and star systems. So it's a bit more kind of, I guess, abstract, if that's really the effect.
Definitely feels a lot more dreamy.
This one's the more video gamey of the ones we've heard so far, and I don't know how that if that comes across to the ear on first listen, but there's one synth that I know I've talked about on stream before. I forget the instrument name on my synthesizer, but it's number 329, and I use it in a lot of things. And the kind of like video gamey bass line you hear in the beginning is that synth.
Hmm.
And then the high synth that comes in towards the middle, which again, both that and the bass are using, actually not the bass, just the synths are using the slicer effect again, just slower than the last track we heard. It's using that same instrument preset, and it sounds like you ever play a lot of like old NES games?
Yes.
Have you ever played games that are made by Sunsoft?
Yes.
Like my one of my favorite Nintendo games of all time is Blaster Master on the original NES. That's made by
Oh my God.
Sunsoft, and
Yeah. Yeah.
the soundtrack uses a type of, it's probably MIDI, right? It's like MIDI composition stuff, but it uses
Yes.
a bass
I
that's
think it
very
is.
similar to what I have here, and then the high note synths are similar to the high note here. I specifically kind of tweak some settings to kind of emulate that sound because I love the music in the original Blaster Master.
So good.
And
Still holds
so,
up today.
what was that?
I said the music still holds up today.
Oh, absolutely. And it's kind of interesting hearing like the reboot series Zero that they've done recently,
Yeah.
which is a different composer, but still in that really similar style of using like the synth sets that they used in the old ones with more kind of modern instruments. Oh, I see. Pale Rider's back. Pale Rider says I had to attach a defibrillator to my router.
Oh
Uh oh.
no. Oh no. It had died.
I'm always paranoid that my router is going to give out on me while I'm on stream and kill my broadcast. I'm sure you can relate.
Oh, I've had that happen multiple times.
Yeah, I've had it happen to me before where I'm doing something and everything just dies.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then everyone is sitting there for like 5 10 minutes while I have to restart everything and get back online.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you're like, oh God, I'm so sorry. Then it
Yeah,
feels so awkward.
Pale Rider says I brought it back to life under the threat of death, and also Mycelia's scuff is stuff of legend, but also comical, and we don't mind.
Oh yeah, I've actually yeah, that's real bad. I have real bad scuff.
Well, that's part of the VTubing gig. It wouldn't be
It
VTubing
is
if it wasn't at least 20% scuff every once in a while.
100%. Oh, might happen so often though, but sorry, keep going. I don't want to throw us off.
No, no, it's fine. Like I always tell my folks that I'm super paranoid about audio, so I always ask like if audio is coming in clearly or if anything needs to be tweaked because I have so many different setups for the types of streams I do
Hmm.
that each one's like slightly different, especially my beatbox and music stuff. And I have to switch devices around and make sure settings are right. And it's, I know if you watch the archives from between when I first started and now, like the audio sounds slightly different for every single broadcast,
Uh,
and it drives me nuts.
I have something that I would probably recommend to you, but I don't want to go in a huge spiel about it on stream right now. So I'll send it to you later.
Okay, sure. Yeah, if you have any suggestions, I think I kind of got around one of the problems by having dedicated sources for like my music stuff specifically. I started doing that
Mhm.
like 2 or 3 streams ago, so now I don't have to tweak things every single time.
Yeah,
But
like dedicated streams, nesting, and then you can have damn it, I'm gonna say it. You can have streamer bots set it up, so depending on what you have either in your title or in what you have for like your genre, it will auto activate or hide things.
oh,
And it can do it all.
that sounds really useful. Yeah, if you have any information you want to send me later
I
on, I'll
will
take a
send it
look.
all to you.
I am all for learning best practices.
I mean, it's I can just switch over to be like, here's the game I'm playing. It will switch my overlays, it will switch my tags, it will switch all my audio stuff set over and yeah. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah. I'll send it to you later, but sorry, go ahead.
No, no, that's good. Thank you. I appreciate it. As far as the rest of the track goes, art wise, it's a little bit faded out because I caught it right before the track was transitioning to the next one. But the track mech art for this one is this pink guy down here. Again, very vibrant, not camouflage based color, but the one here in
It's so cool looking.
the come at me bro pose with the claws I thought was kind of a fun design, so I adapted it for this particular project. And
It's the high contrast pink with the purple lining and the gold is just such a good combination.
oh, thanks. I also added the kind of energy trails on the blades
Yeah.
themselves. That's surprisingly easy to do.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's just a layer. Again, I do this in
Ah.
Photoshop because I have Photoshop configured to do pixel based stuff easily.
Hmm.
Uh, my folks who've been around my drawing streams know I use Clip Studio for my regular drawing stuff. I use Photoshop for pixel stuff, and I've been learning Ace Sprite, which is another program for
Ooh.
pixel art, and it's much more suited towards animation. But
Yeah.
I can't animate for to save my life, but I'm trying to learn. But in Photoshop, since I'm working on like layers, all I did for
Mhm.
let's see, my cursor's right
My
behind
head's
your
in the
head,
way.
but
You may have to make me smaller or move me.
I'll go over on this side for the this arm. It's
Yeah.
just a single color on a layer above the main sprite, and then dropping the transparency.
Oh,
That's it.
okay, that's way easier than I thought it was gonna be.
There are some effects we'll see a little bit later. I had to do a bit more kind of tweaking in order to get it to look okay, but more or less when you see that effect on here, that's it. It's just on a layer above with the transparency drop down.
Oh, I love it. That's the way I do a lot of stuff. So like, yes.
Yeah, sometimes the solution doesn't necessarily need to be terribly complex,
Oh no,
and I'm all for trying to save time when I can, since nothing I do is efficient.
it's okay. As long as it's you have a good time about it, that's what counts.
Yeah, like I always joke with my community because we do drawing streams every other week or so, and I work on various projects. And the
Mhm.
running gag is that I never finish anything, at least not on stream.
Yeah,
I
it's
I,
okay. I don't either.
I always tell them I work extremely slow, which is why I don't do commissions. It would be a nightmare for someone to commission me something because it would take me forever to finish, and I'm not going to do that to people that are paying money.
No,
That guy says it's the artist's way, my friendo.
that.
I hear ya, and we did get a hydrate from Pale Rider.
Oh, gotta hydrate, hydrate, hydrate.
Iconic says I got too many fix cooking in the oven. Oh, I definitely understand that, man. Iconic
Tons
is
of
a
whips.
yeah. Iconic has is a writer, a fan fiction writer, and he has a lot of projects he's
Ooh,
working on. And I've talked a bit about some of the writing stuff I've done, and like I'm even worse at finishing writing than I am on drawings.
same. I think the last time I completed something like that was written was 4 or 5 years ago.
It's tough, man, especially if you hit like a block and
Yeah,
like
and
a
then you
wall.
can't move.
Yeah,
Can't move past it, and if you go back and reread, and you're like, "Oh, I can move past this," you're like, "But I just don't know where to go," and it's like, ah,
my solution back when I was writing a lot more was to start a new story.
yeah,
That's not a good idea.
no, no, it is not.
That's why when it comes to a lot of the hands-on and concept work, I'm trying to transition more to collaborative stuff with other people that I know can do things better and faster than me,
Hmm.
which is how commissions like this come into effect and some other things I'm working on. It's like I can learn how to do everything myself and then it'll just take me 50 years to get stuff done.
Yeah, well, if you spread yourself too thin, then you can't focus on the stuff that's like the really important stuff, which is the initial core with the music and then the operation setting up of everything for it to come together. So
Yeah.
too
If I
too
didn't have a
much and you
regular
won't get
9 to
anything
5
done.
job on top of doing content, then I wouldn't have to worry about it, but there's only so
Oh
many
my
hours
God,
in a
that
day.
then it sucks away a lot of your time.
Yep. But it's still fun. I wouldn't do it if it wasn't fun.
Exactly.
All right. Are we ready to move on to the next one? This
Oh, sure.
is track 5. This one is called Planet Splitter. Whoop. Oh, almost got it. All right, that was
Ooh.
Planet Splitter. And I did see, oh, Hydrate from Lava King. Lava King's here. Welcome to the stream, Lava King. I'm going to
Wow,
need
the
to get.
the opening where it had those like the trailing synths, I was like, "Oh, I like this."
This one, if I was to kind of pick a mood, ominous is this one.
Yeah.
Lava King says I'm still sick. Ah, it sucks, man. Hopefully you feel
Oh
better soon.
no.
Try and get better quickly, and hopefully the weird electronic stuff that we're listening to for this release will hopefully not make it worse. I'd feel really guilty if that was the case.
Should hasten your recovery. The vibrations will give you good whatever they say vitamin absorption abilities. I don't know.
We're not doctors. No, no
Yeah.
medical recommendations. But I
The
think
lab
it's
coat I wear is false.
there you go. I think it's interesting that you and I did see Pale Rider further up picked on a couple things that kind of stand out on this particular track. The beginning that starts with like kind of a it's a string mix and that almost buzzing type of synth that trails. I've
Yeah.
used that in a couple tracks on this release. I think it's called Fargo. Don't ask me why it's called that, but it's a specific type of synth that sounds like a really weird vibration played through some sort of key-based synthesizer, like a piano. So it's like a piano, but the sound itself is very distorted.
It's so good.
Yeah, but it sounds like a really interesting, like an interesting texture overlaid over things, which is why I've used it in a lot of things like
Yeah,
this.
it's such a good texture to overlay. It gives that little the brain scritch.
Lava King says, "Why is it called Fargo?" I just said, "Don't ask me why it's called Fargo," because the creator of the synth is from that part of the United States. There you go. Was that Dakota? Is that one of the Dakotas? Where's Fargo? I don't know. I don't live on that side of the country. But one thing that Pale Rider picked up on is that it's a pseudo drop, but the part where everything muffles before the high strings come in, that's the filter effect I was talking about.
So nice.
And at first it completely muffles everything like you're putting like a pillow over the sound source, and then you can hear it
Yeah.
sort of back off and the sound kind of creeps up, and then it goes away when the strings come in. That's just turning the effect of the filter down. And so it starts really muffled, then you back the effect off and it starts letting more of the sound through, and then turning it off completely. I have to kind of time when I'm taking the effect off as I'm recording, because these aren't recorded in pieces. It's the whole track is recorded like this from start to finish live.
Ooh,
And
that's
it makes it
practically a dance.
challenging. Yeah, it makes it challenging because I can't edit individual instrument tracks like in post. So I have to set like all of the individual sound mixing and settings up in playback, and then I basically set my computer to record, and then I just quote unquote perform the track from start to finish, and then I stop, and then I edit it down and then loop it, or loop like
Hmm.
it in a repeat.
Oh
Lava
God,
King,
it's so good.
Lava King says, "I'm sorry. Do you say piano? Piano? Do you mean piano? Uh, Am I pronouncing it weird? Apparently, my West Coast accent sounds weird to some people, but I
It's
say,
the instead of the and that they're hung up on.
oh, like piano?
Yeah,
I don't know anyone who pronounces it like that.
I say it like that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but it's okay. It's okay. I'm
That's
from
not how
the
it's
opposite
pronounced in
side.
the musical term? Because that's a musical term too, not just an instrument, right?
Yeah.
Is that how it's pronounced in the musical term?
For piano?
Yeah.
Y- yeah. I mean, at least in the areas that I've lived, and I will say I've lived in a couple different areas. I have heard it referred to as both ways. In the area that I grew up and mostly lived in for the longest time, it was definitely piano.
Well, I'll say this because I had to think of a ready example. When you hear the famous Billy Joel song, he doesn't say, "Sing us a song, you're the piano man." I'm pretty sure he pronounces it with a soft A.
Piano man. Yeah, he does. Yeah, yeah, it's has to do with like inflection. And yes, he does. He doesn't have a hard A in there.
We can talk about the regional linguistical difference in pronunciation. I know Lava King is in Canada. Maybe they say things a little differently up there. But that's funny. No one's called me out on that one before because I talk about that instrument all the time since I use a lot of piano synth instruments in my work. Yells at me, do not pull that card. Don't get mad, eh,
the
bud?
the accent.
They say Z instead of Z. I do know that one since a bunch of my fellow peers are up there in Canada.
Hmm.
The other one, that I get a lot from people out, on either coast or even in up in Canada land. Here's a good data point that everyone can see right now, since I don't know where exactly you're from. I'm not going to ask because it's, I won't dox you. But how would you describe what you put on top of your house to protect it?
A roof.
So where I'm from, we say roof.
Oh, yeah. I knew you were gonna go for that as soon as you asked me it.
And I could tell you a lot of people give me flack for that one, but it's definitely like a West Coast thing.
Yes, it really is. So I'm on the East Coast. So yeah, there's a lot of.
I think it's the double O words for a lot of them because people
It
for
is
for like room, I say room. People say room on the East
room.
Coast.
Yeah.
Lava King says you guys say rough, not rough. Rough is what a dog says or what sandpaper feels like. I'm talking about a roof on your house or a
It's
roof.
okay. It's kind of like the same difference as leash and lesh. I've heard it said both ways.
I've never heard lesh for like a dog.
I've heard lesh. But
Uh,
that was
that's a
yeah.
new one. I've never heard that.
Okay, I've got another one. Chimney and chimley.
I've also never heard chimley with an L.
Oh my God. Okay.
No, that's not even spelled the same way.
It's spelled the same way. What the fuck are people doing with the Great British language? We are localizing it.
I guess.
What is
I've never heard that one. That's got to be like some sort of regional, like
it is.
U.S.
It's a regional thing. That's why it's like I've heard it, but it's real.
Another thing I've heard people say on this coast in certain parts, instead of water, they say water, like WORTER.
Yeah.
I find this
I've
stuff
heard that
interesting
one.
because I studied linguistics for a bit. And it's part of my background, and listening to the like regional ways people pronounce things is always pretty interesting to me. But the water one is kind of wild. I've heard enough people do it that's not like a single person speech impediment thing. It's like an actual regional pronunciation in certain places.
Yeah.
Iconic says Raku or Roku. No one says my name right. It's fine. Even Wazi, my one of my peers, it took her forever to get my name right. She kept calling me Raku. It's not like a rack.
Oh,
It's just something you store things on. My name is pronounced Raku, like a
like
Japanese
rock
person
music.
pronouncing luck. That's part of where it comes from.
Yeah, because they can't pronounce R. It's very hard to do.
It's all right. I will. I'm not gonna get hung up on people saying my name 100% correctly, but it is funny when someone calls me out for saying something wrong. And this is the first time I've heard piano. That I've heard a lot of them. That's the first one for that. I'm not gonna change the way I say it.
Now you're gonna be self-conscious about it from from now on.
Piani.
Piano. Hit on the piano keys.
That's funny. Anyway, back to the music and not how
Sorry.
people say things weird. No, it's not you. I blame chat. I did see Lava King says I'm literally foaming at the mouth. Hey, everybody pronounces things differently, I guess. Lava King says that's it. I'm getting my hockey stick. Hey, no, don't beat the maple syrup out of me, man. I don't want to make my northern neighbors angrier than I already have. So one thing I did want to talk about for Planet Splitter, again, we talked about how the tone of the track is kind of more ominous and foreboding.
Yes.
kind of rough story narrative wise, this particular part of the story is whichever person is going through all the things that these tracks are kind of chronicling. This person is witnessing like FAFO in effect right now, as in wherever they're at, the powers that be are about to do something that they shouldn't. And the name comes from a couple different things in media you see. One thing that kind of sprung to mind was the story of Dead Space,
Ooh.
where they drilled into a planet to find that marker relic from an alien civilization,
Yep.
and it unleashed literal hell upon the galaxy.
Absolute destruction.
So the subject of the story here isn't the one who's doing it, but is bearing witness to something that is definitely going to cause problems. Hence the really kind of oppressive and, again, foreboding nature of the song. Love King asks, "Hey Raku, you ever try the old Phantasy Star games?" I have not. That's a series I didn't have a system that could play them back in the day, but I understand they're really popular. And as a big Monster Hunter fan, I think there's a lot I'd like in Phantasy Star, but I have not played it. How about you? Have you ever played that series, Mycelia?
I played a little bit of one because I borrowed like the stuff from a friend and I was like, "Oh, I love this." And then they're like, "Oh, cool. Yeah." And then they went really intense into the story and I was like, "Well, I'll let you hold on to this and I'll, when I get equipment, I'll be fine." And then I never ended up getting anything and I never finished any of it.
That's a
I
mood.
felt bad. It was good though.
Yeah, people I knew who played it back in the day said like multiplayer co-op was really fun.
Yeah.
4 is the one you should try. Is that the most recent one, Lava King, that's out now? Because they have some modern iteration. I haven't kept track, but yeah, series seem cool. I don't know if I really can afford to fall down a big time sink rabbit hole like that, but
The long time sink.
yeah, that's why I don't play MMOs. I I have enough trouble getting stuff done as it is. Like I have a bunch.
I am I
Good.
understand. I'm only allowed one MMO right now.
I got friends that are playing FF14. That's the big one.
Good, you should play it. Not to push it at you. I'm so sorry. That's my
And
one MMO.
every single person has said the exact same thing to me.
The storyline is so good.
Oh yeah, like it looks cool and the gameplay looks cool. Everything about it looks cool, but again, between having a job and working on content, if I started playing FF14, one of those things would not get done anymore. And it's
Correct.
probably not going to be the thing that gives me food.
No, it's a huge time sink too. Don't do it unless you can commit and like on a vacation and like don't yeah.
Yeah, I think MMOs become too much of a job for me. Love King says I'm not talking about MMO. I'm talking about old Sega Genesis JRPG. I know, but I'm one of the reasons why I'm hesitant to get into games that have a time commitment like that is the same reason why I don't play MMOs. I'm not saying Fantasy Star itself is an MMO, but same model and risk is why I have to be
So
careful with
much
games
time.
like that. Like I really thought about getting into Diablo when it came out because I used to play a lot of D2 back in the day,
Oh, I
and
love Diablo.
a bit
I
of
the newest one, not great.
yeah. I had some friends who played D4 at launch,
Oh,
and they liked it. And then like the first major patch came out and annihilated a whole bunch of builds and really made people mad.
it messed up a lot. But I will say because they reused a lot. I'm sorry, sorry. Um, if you've played D3, you've played D4 because they reused a lot of the same maps,
Oh, okay.
and it feels pretty much the same in a lot of places.
Apparently, the upcoming patch for now, leading into spring, is also not good.
hmm
Yeah.
I've
Uh,
I've heard a lot of mixed stuff about it. Like they're like it's just a rehash again, and it's not even anything like new. And yeah, I miss like I have so my first ever and favorite game of all time is Diablo 1. It's the first one. So good. Diablo 2, second, right there with it. Super good. It fell
Well,
downhill after that.
yeah, I played 3 for a bit, but kind of bounced off of it after completing like the first difficulty before they patched a lot of stuff, and I never played the expansion.
Oh,
Lava King says I would give D2 a shot. There is a mod version. I forget what it's called because my friend of mine told me about it. There's a mod to existing D2 architecture that has added a bunch of content, and it overhauls a lot and changes the game. I know because some of my friends were doing that before D4 came out.
yeah.
Apparently, it's really good. I forget the name of it, but I have to track it down. But I'm actually more interested in trying that at some point than D4, which is really funny.
Yeah. I mean, why not go to something that you know works and that you know the community's put a lot of love into rather than something that the company's like, buy this because this will get you this and you can buy this with this.
Yeah, it is. It is something that it's modded on the original framework Lava King on PC. But from
Hmm.
what I was reading, it's pretty easy to set up. I just haven't. Again, I, if I get
Time.
into that, then I'm gonna fall off the face of the planet
Yeah.
and get nothing done.
I feel that.
But that is interesting to see the arc that D4 has gone through. Like I said, maybe I'd pick it up a little bit after release, or after the things have been updated and whatnot. And it seems like it's getting worse and worse.
Yeah.
Just too
I don't
bad.
think there's a way for them to rescue it. But anyway, sorry. Don't mean to
After
sidetrack you.
after Immortal too, it's such a shame, but Blizzard has done
Yeah.
quite a bit to lose public favor. So,
Well, they did that out of season April Fool's joke and everything died.
yep. And that's what caught my eye when people were talking about whatever current D4 patch is coming up. I think Asmongold said in the video, like, is this update an out of season April Fool's prank? I was like, uh
Do you
oh,
guys not have phones? Yeah.
that's not a good sign if people are saying that about the upcoming update.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh well, I guess I consider that bullet dodged.
Yeah.
It's
But
funny.
sorry. We keep distracting you.
No, it's fine. I'm not really on a strict schedule because it's a holiday for a lot of people in the states tomorrow. But if
Okay.
you're actually, that should have asked when we started. Are you on like a strict time schedule for tonight? Because you're ahead of me in time.
Nah, the responsibility that'll happen at 7 a.m. will happen regardless, and it won't last super long. It's fine. I have coffee. I'm
Okay.
not on a strict schedule. It's okay.
All right. Well, I'll try and make sure we don't take too long.
You're fine.
Usually be inside 3 hours if we really have a lot to discuss. But one thing I wanted to mention, in addition to sort of like the vibe of the track, again, the kind of foreboding nature is going to lead into the one after this a bit. But the
Hmm.
the mecha design for this one to talk about real quick is this purple guy right here. This one has a bit of an interesting trope that I like in a lot of mecha media, and that's quad leg mechs.
So good. It also feels a lot more because it is the the extreme change from like the bipedal form, and it changes so much. It feels a lot more aggressive than the rest of them too.
Yeah, and one thing that the Armored Core series, which my folks here know, I've talked a lot about it because I played a lot of Six when it came out this last year.
Hmm.
One of the things in that game is the ability to build quadrupedal mechs. It's one of the leg
Yes.
types, and they're really fun. They're really mobile. They can kind of walk around and strafe, whereas bipedal ones have to like stop for heavy weapons and like plant in order to fire. Versus the four-legged ones can just kind of drift all over and a lot of fun. I always thought that concept was neat. I don't know how practical it'd be to design something in the real world that has four legs like that, but it looks cool.
It looks super cool. It's not actually as hard as you think it is because it's actually easier to build a robot for like an actual robot with that is on like the quad legs versus having something that is bipedal with the just the two.
I guess that would make sense, kind of like a bug, but
Yeah.
if you're thinking about something like this, where it's a quadrupedal lower body and it's got arms and an upper body, like
Because the
creating
legs
a
would balance.
Yeah, well, I mean, creating like a motor or a locomotion system that would support something like that would probably be difficult. Versus like just having a turret mounted on top of legs instead of a whole upper body.
Yeah.
Lava King asks two things: who's Asmongold again, and two, your quad leg. Asmongold's a pretty famous and well-known streamer. He always pops up because he talks a lot about current stuff, especially in gaming. I don't follow him too
Yes.
closely, but occasionally I'll watch some of his opinion pieces to see what he thinks. He's a pretty smart guy, and usually how I
He
find out
he
about gaming trends is when he talks about it.
yeah, yeah, he's very on he doesn't have hippie hair. He's bald. Don't let him lie to you.
Yeah, he's also the guy with
He has
the
no hat. No hat. He doesn't wear hats.
yeah, no hat. He's known for having a really messy room too. It's kind
Really
of
gross.
it's kind of a gremlin.
He's a gremlin.
Yeah,
100%.
I'm
Yeah,
sure
that guy, the
I'm
gross
sure you've seen
guy.
his face around. Yeah.
White guy always wears a white t-shirt. Well, it's yellow, but
And to answer your second question, as far as like my preference for like mecha styles in a game like Armored Core, I I do like quadrupedal mechs because they're really versatile, but I usually don't stick to one type. Lava King says I was getting him confused with Moist Critical. Oh yeah, Charlie is a lot more put together as far
stoic.
as his life than Asmongold,
Yeah, he's also is frequently very clean and is well groomed.
and doesn't get in trouble with what he says. Charlie
Nope.
very rarely gets into any sort of drama or controversy,
Yep.
but people are always after him for some reason, which is really funny.
Because he's big and famous, I guess.
Yeah.
Sorry, back to the check. I'm sorry. I keep dragging you down different holes. I'm so sorry.
No, it's okay. Lava King says, "Who's Charlie?" Charlie's Moist Critical. That's his actual name.
Yeah, so if somebody says Moist Critical or Charlie or Penguin Z,
Penguin Z0. Yeah,
yeah, that's him. It's all the same dude.
yeah. The woo yeah baby meme guy.
Yeah,
That
we should have just started with that because then they would know exactly who it is.
was such a long time ago.
Different holes. Oh, damn it, I did it again. My bad.
Not a problem. But we can move on that note.
Yes.
Next one, this is I'm losing track. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Track 6. This one is called Charged Stratosphere on YouTube. We're
Uh-oh.
still live, so I don't think my connection has died, but
Yeah, no, it's not. I don't think it's you. I think it's YouTube.
there we go. All right, we'll leave it there. All right, that was Charged Stratosphere. Kind of
Ooh.
continuing the more ominous tone from the last one, but a bit more aggressive this time around. To me,
Very
this one.
much. Oh, go ahead.
No,
Sorry, sorry.
go ahead, go ahead. I'm looking at the
No,
chat
you're
anyway.
okay. You're okay. You're okay.
I did see Lava King mentioned further up. Lava King said, "Anyway, Raku, there's a quadruped mech in Gundam I want to sell you on because it has that mobility." Oh, okay. You can either put it in the chat or you can send it in the Discord. It's, I know we talk about mech stuff a lot there, but as far as like narrative for this one, we mentioned that the last one is kind of like people messing with something they probably shouldn't mess with. This particular one
Yep.
is a direct continuation of that, where now something bad has happened. And I tried to kind of convey it's not going to sound like things are exploding and going wrong, but this is definitely like bad things, not good. So the tone is again kind of more aggressive. As far as what that is, kind of open to interpretation. Maybe uncovering or angering something you shouldn't out in the depths of space. But played around with some kind of a mix of like the strings and that kind of clicking, repeating loop you hear in and out throughout the entire track, just to give it kind of an unsettling feel.
Hmm.
So a bit of an experiment for this one. I don't know if that really comes across again on first listen, but
Oh, it
definitely.
does. It almost sounds a little bit also like a little bit like mournful, like almost sad, like damn, shouldn't have.
Yeah, like there's some sort of tangible results of what's happening that is not good, that's
Yes.
being felt. And I think the biggest inspiration to try and kind of convey into like song form, and it's nothing profound or really fancy, but I wrote this one around when I was playing Armored Core 6. And one of the big things in the story of that game is that mankind, again, messed around with something they shouldn't have, and it caused like a cataclysm that burned the sky. And part of what takes place in that story is you going to investigate this world that suffered through the aftermath of this big cataclysm.
Hmm.
And so that's kind of where the name comes from. It's not a direct reference to the game, but it's similar in idea, and that was kind of the inspiration for wanting to create something that would go with that type of scenario. And that's always been something I've tried to kind of mess around with, but I wouldn't say I'm super good at it yet.
You're not bad at it at all.
Still got a lot to learn. But as far as the art goes, so the one that corresponds to this track is this yellowish one up here that I had to kind of like move stuff around since the orange one started up there and I had to move it to make room.
Hmm. For the
But
next ones.
yeah, so I did that a couple times, but it shouldn't be that distracting.
It's okay.
But I kind of like the idea. This one has extendable arms.
Ooh, that's a cool design.
Oh, thank you. And the effect, again, the kind of glowing energy on it, exact same as this one down here. Just created a layer above it, kind of really sketched out a rough sort of energy trail pattern, and then did the real easy artist trick of if I needed to show depth to show it going behind the arm, I just deleted the section that was right here,
Yeah.
and then made it look like it was passing around, and then just dropped the transparency. Same thing with the hand. I thought about trying to arrange these so it looks more like a battlefield, but by the time I finished putting them all together, I realized that some of them aren't all facing the same way. Like these ones on the right aren't facing to the
Yeah.
left, like homeboy down here doing the come at me bro pose.
That's okay.
I was like, it's fine. It doesn't
It
doesn't
looks
need to be
great. Looks great.
doesn't need to be that specific. It's just supposed to be something visual to look at in addition to the album art.
Yeah.
Let's see. Is there anything else for this one? Again, kind of more of a mood setter more than anything else. And
Yeah.
and the next one is going to kind of run with the idea, but the mood is going to change a little bit if it's what I'm thinking of.
Ooh.
So if there's no other additional thoughts, we can move on.
No, we don't want to, I don't want to derail you again.
It's fine. It's fine. It's better than us having nothing to talk about.
Very true, very true.
All right, let's go on to track 7, right? 1, 2. Yeah, just count the mechs on the screen. Track 7. This one's called Linear Cannons, which, just as a spoiler, I think this is my favorite one on the entire album.
Ooh.
So we'll talk a little bit about it, but first, let's have a listen. Ooh, almost missed it.
Ooh, I like that. With the way it almost reverberates from side to side. Oh, that's good.
I'm glad it comes across on the stream broadcast, both in Discord and hopefully for the people watching on Twitch. So, specifically with the synth, hearing it pan when the high synth comes in, and it's a really long melody. It's not just one measure, one measure. It's like 12 measures because of how long it takes. But in addition to the slicer effect, which is making that rapids cut on the synth, I
Mhm.
think this one has the panning effect, like panning delay, so it echoes a little bit, but also pings between the left and right channel of sound.
Yes.
And I'm glad it comes across because I think my broadcast normally is set to mono. So folks watching on stream can't hear it. You'll be able to
Oh,
hear it on the final version of the track that's going to be on YouTube and on streaming platforms.
100% wear headphones. Wear headphones. It's so good.
So one of the things with this one, oh, thank you. I appreciate it, especially because this one was interesting to work on. One thing that I really like music style wise is synthwave.
Hmm.
Synthwave is one of my favorite electronic genres because I like the kind of retro-y, like 80s inspired era of like synth and the kind of like quick pacing and overall feel. And I've always tried to replicate that type of sound in the stuff that I do. And Linear Cannons is probably the closest I've gotten to something synthwave adjacent.
Yeah,
And part
it's
of it's the
so
bass
good.
line, that kind of like synth bass, like rapid bass line, and then the high synths as they come in, and then strings. Strings feature prominently across this entire album because they're pretty good at communicating like melodies and harmonies and background stuff, and specifically for synthwave stuff, they like to do a lot of stuff with strings. And so kind of adapting that, and again, this one picks up the energy a little bit. This one sounds kind of like a battle theme to me.
I could hear that. Yeah.
Hence the name too. So like linear cannon again for folks who maybe haven't aren't familiar with that term. That's a type of weapon in Armored Core. And so I was thinking when I was putting this one together, I said it sounds like whatever problem was created in the last two tracks. Now there's a fight going on, whether it's the people that are defending themselves or someone that's taking the fight to whatever hostile presence has emerged. This sounds like the march to battle. And so when I was thinking about the terms, just because I didn't want to like blatantly pull a ton of things from something that exists, we'll see like
Hmm.
at least one more example later. But I was like, it sounds like a good thing that would reflect the weaponry, whether it's a bunch of like mechs that are armed or armaments themselves. That's why it's called linear cannons.
Ooh.
But yeah, this one was fun. I want to do more with this particular style and try and get better at like adapting a lot of the instrumentation again to kind of be like that synth vaporwave type sound, synthwave. Art wise, the mech for this one's kind of in the back, but this larger white one, a lot of like really sleek lines that's channeling kind of energy from this central point up here to the hand. Messed around with some particle effects, but it's just one layer above with the transparency lowered.
It's such a nice effect.
I could be wrong on that one. Let me actually check the reference file because I started mixing up colors on some of them, but I'm zoomed out so I
Hmm.
can't see. Let me double check, make sure I'm not talking out of my rear.
No, it looks like the effect on that.
Oh, I see. Okay, I had to zoom in a little bit. It's hard to see when you're looking at it on the broadcast, but there's two colors on the energy there. It's lighter kind of teal blue and white. It's mixed together really closely, but you can't really see it unless you zoom in. But when you look at the image, it looks more like kind of flickering light or like a glow,
Hmm.
and it's because there's two colors combined. I knew I started doing that on one of these, and it was this one. But if you look at it from far away, all you see is white because of the transparency being lowered.
Yeah.
It's
Still
okay.
looks good. It does give a little bit, if you look at it, you can see the teal on like some of the outerlying spark pieces.
Yeah, it's not super contrasting, but it works. And I was kind of experimenting with ways to add those touches, and I'll probably do that on future ones.
Yeah.
I will say this is something I've talked about on drawing streams for these sprite type pieces. Which again, I'm still learning, but shading and lighting is something I've always sucked at considerably. I like shading, but I'm bad at it.
Oh,
Doing the Pokemon Infinite Fusion sprites taught me a ton about shading because they all have to have the same light source.
yes.
The rules for submitting things for Pokemon Infinite Fusion, just to sidebar us briefly, follows the up to gen all of the 2D gens of Pokemon sprites before they went 3D.
Hmm.
They all, I never noticed this because I never looked closely, but they all have the lighting coming from the upper left, the light source shining down from the upper left, down on the Pokemon itself. So when you draw the custom sprites of the fusions, you have to shade accordingly. So the shades have to follow
Oh,
an upper left light source.
so they fit in.
Yeah, so they follow the format and then the outlining has to follow the format for the way they do it too. Like it's not solid black like mine are here.
Hmm.
And that's another thing that's tough. But in following the strict rules for approval on those project sprites taught me about adhering to like light sources, and it made like all these other non-Pokemon ones I've been working on a little bit more consistent with lighting.
Hmm.
So if nothing else, doing that has improved my ability to shade, but I'm still bad at it.
Oh,
These don't all have the same light source because I drew them all just
different times.
individually. Like the white one, I think it's upper left. This green one's upper right. This one is like in front, shining like forwards.
Yeah.
And so like this project doesn't have a consistent light source. That wasn't the point.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to get better at it.
They look great. Don't doubt yourself.
It's a work in progress, but thanks. These are fun to draw, but I mentioned just because if I look back at some of the ones I did a year ago before I got more practice with light sources, the shading is a little bit hard to look at now. But
Yeah, I know that feeling.
I didn't do any of these that far back. These were all done recently in the last couple months, so I could
Hmm.
use what I learned. Hopefully, create a better product. Another thing
They
that
look great.
I've been trying to learn because I know you do a lot of like bioorganic type concept work as well. For
Yes.
things like the like tentacles and flexible appendages, getting like dynamic shading as things twist and sort of undulate and move around,
It'd be hard.
it's hard, and I had to learn how to do that specifically because I made some really interesting Pokemon fusions that had a lot of
Ooh.
bits that were following that type of lighting scheme.
It's a weird thing to work on because if you're lucky, you can make it kind of flat, so you have like sharp flips, and if not, then you got to struggle a little bit to get the impression that it's twisting as it's moving and all this other stuff. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and the challenge of doing the like the Pokemon sprites, the base
Mhm.
canvas size is 96 by 96, I think.
Pixels?
Yeah,
Oh
it's
my God.
it's a set canvas size because it has to be scaled up. Oh, I see Pale Rider's got a duck out. Hey, no
Night.
problem. Thanks for dropping by and checking out the album. If you want to see the rest of the stuff we're going to talk about. Oh, and thank you for the follow, Pale Rider. Much appreciated. Uh,
Yeah.
the archives for the VOD here will be up on Twitch, but also on YouTube pretty soon after.
Oh, why did it hit me? It was
Whoa,
not rigged. I didn't do anything.
that's that's weird that I didn't get a notification for that.
Uh-oh.
Not that it matters because I could see it, but usually I have a redeem that goes off if someone gifts a sub.
It might oh, you may have to check your audio sources, see how what channels everything is currently set on.
Yeah, that's weird. But thank you for the gifted sub to Mycelia.
To me.
Enjoy
Nice.
the sub emotes. But yeah,
I
again,
did
thanks.
not rig anything. Sorry, go ahead.
Rigged. No, no, you're fine. Thanks, Pale Rider. Again, I appreciate it, and hopefully I'll catch you around in the next one. That's funny.
The odds. The odds that it hit me is just wow.
I might have to. It might be because I don't have my stream notification source on this overlay. That's
That's
only.
why.
Yeah, that's probably why.
Yeah. Unless you have it set up to be able to hear it even when you're not on the same overlay, you won't hear it if it's not on this one.
No, like I'm in OBS and I have to set it up on each overlay, which I normally do. But
You gotta nest your audio scenes and stuff.
I should probably learn how to do that.
I'll send you a bunch of stuff, don't worry.
Okay. I basically have to set what I've done. Again, I'm not saying it's sufficient, but I have each stream scene for whatever type of content I'm doing, and I just
Uh-huh.
have it set up manually for all of the different sources for each one.
Oh,
So
oh, that's doing it the hard way. I'll show you an easier way.
I told you I never do anything easy.
It's okay. It's okay. It'll save you so much time later that you can make scenes within like 5 minutes, if even that, and have everything set up at the same levels.
Okay. Yeah, I'll take a look. Like I said, I'm all for
Yeah,
best
later, later.
practices. Being being outed right now as
It's okay.
not having efficient stream setups, but it's okay.
Well, it's it's just the way that you're comfortable with. It's not inefficient. It's just not optimized.
Oh, I figured it all out just by like googling. Like
See, everybody starts there.
before I became a VTuber, I did stream, but it was all like really low complexity, just art streams with like no community stuff, no notifications, just
Hmm.
whatnot in another life. And then when I became a VTuber, I wanted to have all that stuff, so I had to learn.
To do
And
all of it, yeah.
yep, and I just learned by trial and error,
That's the way to do it. That's the best way to do it. Because
or
then
when
if
something would
anything goes
fail.
wrong, you know how to do it.
Yeah, but yeah, we can talk about that later, and if I can improve things and make it easier, then I'm all for it. All right. Any other thoughts or notes on linear cannons
Um,
before we move on?
no, it should be good.
All right. Well, we'll move on to number 8. This next one is called encryption. I was close.
Ooh,
All right, so that was Encryption. A little bit of a different kind of vibe than the last one. To me,
very
and
much so.
you could tell me if it sort of comes across again. I've been listening to these for so long up to the release that I don't really notice a lot of the subtleties because I've again just been listening to the tracks for so long.
Hmm.
But this one to me sounds kind of like a transitional point in the story between the last one, which was like a battle, something involving a battle. To me, this is whoever is we're following throughout this journey is leaving, is going somewhere away from the battle. Kind of assuming like a cityscape wherever this person is,
Yeah,
going
I
through
could
the
see that.
city away from the conflict with the intention of wanting to leave.
Hmm.
And so to me, it kind of sounds like going through like the alleys and trying to find like a solution or a way, a means to get away from wherever this person has gotten.
Almost kind of searching.
Yeah. So again, like a kind of more of like a searching travel type of theme within like the setting of like a city. It little sounds a little bit kind of like suspicious if that makes sense. Like maybe it's like the kind of sketchier districts this person is going through as they're trying to find a way off the planet. To me, it sounds like a city at night, like city streets and back alleys at night is what it sounds like to me.
Oh, yeah, it kind of does. Yeah.
And so if that comes across, then it means I did something right because
Be good.
originally I didn't record these in the order that you're seeing. I recorded a big batch of tracks throughout, several months, and then I whittled it down to the ones I liked, and then I figured out how I wanted to put them in order of the album itself.
Hmm.
And sometimes it's more like, okay, there's got to be a pretty clear progression because there's a narrative. And then other times it's like, well, I'm going to put them together in a way that kind of flows, but it's not going to be really structured. And this one is kind of in the middle of that.
It sounds very good, though. It very much so like cautionary feeling, very sure, for sure, for sure.
Yeah, it sounds cautious, I guess. Cautious, but still like conveying movement. So it's not
Yes.
really slow like sneaking, like or stealth, but it's like under the cover of night trying to get somewhere. And yeah, that was kind of the thought. So if it came across, then again, it did something right.
You did good.
Track wise, art for this one, the design that corresponds to this one's down here in the foreground. This slightly smaller mech that is shooting a big energy beam out of its face. Now this one, I messed around with a little bit with the effect to get this sort of beam,
Hmm.
and that one was kind of fun to tinker around with. It's all one layer, but I did it in components. So I think the dark green or the darker green color was first, then the lighter core was second, and then I did these trailing like DBZ section. I don't know what you call that, but these trailing parts going around it.
Like the looping charge thing.
Is that what it's called?
I don't know if that's the official term for it, but that's the way I've always taken it as. It's like a excess energy spiral.
Yeah, Iconic is my resident Dragon Ball expert. So if there's an actual term for that in energy, I'm sure he can tell me.
There's got to be.
But yeah, this was kind of going along with the idea about if I was trying to set up a battle scene, and there's another one that's I think directly after this that if I was doing again side one versus side two, it would have worked pretty well for that, but I didn't do that intentionally.
That's okay. You'll think about it next time.
Yeah, it'd be nice to have that idea before I'm like 3/4 of the way through a bunch of concept pieces for a project.
Yeah.
I don't usually write out outlines or structures for stuff.
Ooh.
Oh, sweet Jesus. Boy, I really should have my alerts on my media
It's
share.
okay. I just saw it come through, so too.
Toxicure with the raid. Wazzy and crew. What's up, folks? Welcome, welcome to the launch party for the Titanium Forest album.
Whoop.
We're in the last quarter of it, but thank you so much for dropping by. Let me give a shout out to Wazzy.
How was your stream?
Cult of the Lamb, huh?
Ooh.
Oh, Hydrate from Pineapple Ryan, Oral Wolves, and a stretch from Oral Wolves. Just for reference, because we were talking about Wazzy earlier, and we're saying nothing but good things. She's the animator friend of mine that
All
I'm
good things.
collaborating
All
with.
good things.
You should definitely check her animations out because they're very funny. But yes, how did Cult of the Lamb go, folks? Were there many sacrifices made? I don't know much about Cult of the Lamb. Whatever deity or satanic entity. Orwell says I got into the stocks. I'm
Oh.
assuming not like stocks and bonds, but like the stocks when people are imprisoned. I only based on what I know about Wazzy and how she runs her community. Yep, see, I was right.
You knew. You knew.
Oh, you wacky cultists. Well, I hope you had fun. And again, just to give a real quick overview of what we're doing here, I am joined by my co-host tonight, Mycelia Corpus, one of my VTuber
Hello.
peers. She did the album art for Titanium Forest, which you see on screen here. We are going through each track. Now we're on track 8 or
Yes.
9.
I think it's 8.
This is track 8 for Encryption. We're going into track 9.
Okay.
But we are taking a look at the tracks and talking a little bit about the music process and some of the art, the mechs that I designed that go with each of the tracks. And after we get through that, we're going to jump over to another video for behind the scenes footage of the concept development of the album art itself. So I would definitely say if you're curious to see how the awesome mech art was created, we're going to go over that after we get through the music.
Yeah.
Aura Wolf says, Wazzy wouldn't even let me attend the town meetings. Well,
Oh.
not if you're in the stocks.
Criminals can't attend.
Oh, I guess not. Naked Snake. What's up, Snake? Snake says, a lot of funny homeless jokes. Well, yeah, I would assume so, just for reference. Snake is currently homeless. And so
Oh.
he, in good spirits, is allowing people to make jokes about homelessness. I don't think I would like to make those jokes because it seems a little insensitive to me, but as long as he's cool with it, then
Yeah.
it's fine. But good. I hope the ritualistic cult stream was fun. Didn't they just add
They had
uh
sex.
they added sex to Cult of the Lamb, right? I remember there's a big
Yep.
big
Huge thing about it.
well, be safe out there, crew community. Be responsible. I'm not your father, but
You do
be safe.
something illegal, don't get caught.
That's funny. But yes, welcome. And one thing I'll mention again, since we had a bunch of people join on with the raid, the archives for what we've been doing here on stream will be up shortly after we're done. I'm gonna make the compilation video we're watching now live, along with the behind the scenes stuff, and then this VOD will be on my Twitch channel, and then I'll upload the same thing to YouTube to make sure there's nothing
Yes.
funky with the editing, but it'll go up there right after.
Sorry, I keep distracting you. We keep.
No, it's okay. Was there anything of note for Encryption before we move on? Kind of just talked about the vibe and the feel.
Oh yeah. And honestly, I think you got it really right on the head of like how it felt and everything. Very much cautionary.
Well, on that note, let us move on to track number 9.
Whoop.
This next one is called Heat Sink.
Ooh.
this one outro, and we'll go to the next one. Almost got it.
Oh, I really like that one.
That was Heat Sink. Oh, and thank you. I noticed. I don't know if you saw it when you posted the little dancing the dinosaur emotes.
They synced.
They synced. Yeah, it follows the
Yes.
BPM. I was like, that is convenient.
I was sitting there and I was like, does this match? And I was like, that looks like it matches. I was like, I want to try it, and it did. It synced.
Perfect. Working as
I
intended.
my gosh, that one was good. I really liked that one.
So thinking about the tone and overall sort of vibe of this one, picking up the energy level a bit, this one to me sounds kind of like a chase.
It does. It definitely feels like a chase, or it almost could also be that like that build up to like the hero's build up moment kind of deal where it's like setting things up and heading out towards.
Yeah, I definitely think like again pushing the urgency of travel. So the last one's kind of like more methodical and like we said cautious. This one it's like this person knows where they need to go and now they're
Yeah.
making like a dash for it and they're hurrying there either in a vehicle or on foot or maybe they're being pursued by someone or something, but now there's urgency.
Yes.
And so it's a bit faster. And so in the track itself, this one does something that I haven't done a lot, but it features the melody first. The main melody, which is that plucked synth that repeats pretty much throughout the entire thing, goes away
Oh,
for a bit.
yeah.
Those are pizzicato strings, which is a really fun synth preset to use because it has that kind of like light, plucked, almost whimsical sound depending on what you pair it with.
Yeah.
But here it sounds just like a constant driving force, kind of like, to me it sounds like the voice in your head telling you need to hurry.
Oh, that could, yeah, I could definitely see that.
And so you hear it before for anything else. The song starts with that, and then the beat comes in with no bass line to kind of set the tempo and the urgency of, the person who's the subject of the story, as it were. And then the bass
Hmm.
comes in to push, get that low push, but it doesn't sustain, if that makes sense. The bass comes in and kind of backs off, and then you just hear the beat, so it goes in and out instead of just a constant sustained note along the way, which is kind of fun. I haven't done that a ton on this project.
It was very nice. It was very, very catchy.
It'll get stuck in your head. When I was working on this
Oh,
one,
yeah.
just that initial plucked synth run was stuck in my head for a long time. And then as it goes, like it's a filtered string, I think. It's that type of melody, and it kind of warbles. That
Hmm.
comes in the middle ish. That's a filtered instrument of some sort. And then there's a higher synth that comes into that kind of trades places with the plucked synth for a bit. It's pretty fun. I really liked this track when I made it, and I wasn't sure where I was going to put it. And then I said I could fit this one into the electronic release.
It's so good. It's
It's
so catchy.
it's
Dang it. It's
danceable
so
too.
catchy.
Yeah, it's very danceable, which is not usually my immediate goal when I'm making stuff. Depends what the overall vibe of the project is, but having something that's got like, like a catchy beat and a catchy melody is definitely something that I'd like to be able to do for appeal purposes.
Hmm.
But I could foresee this type of theme being used in stuff, and if I have the chance to use it for content, I'm definitely going to use it.
Oh, for sure. This it could very well sit with like headphones in, going down the sidewalk, just bopping. That, oh God, that's so good.
Biking music
Yes.
or
Or good
running music.
introduction music too.
Yeah. Yeah, again, kind of came together in a way that worked well, and it was pretty fun to mess around with the different elements to kind of, again, create that vibe. So I'm glad it comes across.
Yeah.
The title is also a pun. I try not to do it on everything I do, but the title is a pun because I initially thought like heat sink, like the computer part,
Yeah.
but that's spelled differently. The sink is spelled like a kitchen sink,
Yeah.
but
And this is not
like
like you're
synchronicity.
synced up.
So it's like synchronized energy. Again, not going to be too pretentious with how I name stuff, but I was like, what if I changed the spelling of heat sink so it's like energy plus synchronicity? Hee hee hee. Clever.
It's good.
I think I only did it on this one track. I think.
Ah,
Well, I like puns, but you
puns
have
are
to
the
kind of
best.
you have to choose when to use them, or they get kind of predictable and played out.
True, true.
Let's see, art wise for this one. Oh, okay, we're down here. So the track art for this one is this guy, this green one who's again facing the wrong way, and it might be a little hard to see because of the color overlay with the one above it. But this one is basically shooting a volley of energy projectiles. And I know there's a term for this too in science fiction, like these energy waves that shoot out kind of like missiles, and they,
Plasma?
hmm,
Maybe like a plasma charge or something like that.
yeah, and you see it in certain things, like you see it in mecha anime, you see it in video games where like they shoot out in like a volley and then converge onto their target like a seeking missile, but they're
Hmm.
not like a explosive. They're an energy like just bullet almost. And I know it's got a term, I just don't know what it is. And so I wanted to try
There's
and,
some term out there.
yeah, I wanted to kind of duplicate that for this. So it's not like water because it kind of looks almost like water drops. It's like energy bullets. Doesn't really have any significance like connected to the track or anything. But when I was drawing this one, I was like, I want to draw something else shooting something since we did it with the one before.
Yeah.
And the color seemed to kind of stand out a bit since this one's a little bit lighter.
Yes.
Oh, and same effect for the energy. You can see the color contrast a little bit better, the blue or
Yeah,
green.
the blue on top and the white underlying.
Yeah, I should have used a different color. Should have done purple or something.
It's okay. It looks good.
Let's
Oh
see.
man.
Well, we are on the last track of the album
Last
next.
one.
And oh, I remember which one's coming up next. I mentioned it further at the beginning of the stream. We'll see if anyone remembers what I said specifically. But are we ready to move on to the last one and then get ready for behind the scenes?
Sure.
All right. So I'll let this one, again, outro. This next one is called Overboost. So let's take a
Ooh.
listen. A listen. All right. We actually have the outro screen. That's my Tenpo logo. I'll put us back on the actual track art so we can talk about it. That was the final track in Titanium Forest, Overboost.
Overboost. Ooh, I like that one. I loved the strings coming in on it. And they weren't strong. They were real soft. I was like, oh,
I want to say almost every single track except for maybe two or three have some variation of a string instrument on them,
yeah.
which was intentional, but at the same time I got to be a bit careful in the future when it comes to which instrument sets I use so I don't get kind of pigeonholed.
Mm-hmm.
But did you catch the little reference to what I mentioned at the beginning of the stream? Not just you, Mycelia, for everyone listening. Conk says great job with everything. Oh, thanks, dude. Much appreciated.
Right.
So what I mentioned at the beginning, way back, again, I know we've been doing this for 2.5 hours. I mentioned that
It's okay.
I'm a big fan of drum and bass, and I said there's
Mm-hmm.
at least one track here in this entire album that's drum and bass like, and it's this one.
So good. Feels very meaty.
I'm still kind of learning how to adapt a lot of the heavier, more aggressive types of drum and bass sounds, but this
Mhm.
one it's the beat specifically. The beat is that 1 2 1 2 type beat that's very common in drum and bass. And so this one takes that idea, it gives it kind of a rapid repeating bass line, which that one is the slicer again, I'm pretty sure, because it would be
Mhm.
very difficult to do that rapid bass line consistently, just hitting keys as opposed to having something cut on a rhythm. But this one isn't really that complex. It just has different sections. So like you said, the strings come in at the beginning and they kind of carries the melody for a bit. Then there's a real quick filter transition for like a bar where everything muffles, and then it switches to that kind of chimey synth alternate melody.
Yeah.
Does that for a bit, and then without any sort of filter transition, then it flips towards the end and brings the strings back, and that one drops. And then it kind of goes for a bit, and this one thinks it's going to end, and then you get just the beat for a bit. Then the bass line comes back in, and everything sort of wraps up with the string synths at the very end. So it's really more a matter of like this part comes in, this part leaves. This other part comes in, this part leaves.
Yes.
And when I record these, I have to do that very cleanly because if I miss my cues when I'm, again, performing the song as I'm recording it, I've got to scrap it, start over from the very beginning, and do it all again.
Oh no.
Which is why these songs tend to be like the bass part is like 1.5 to 2 minutes.
Hmm.
At some point, I've told my community this too. I want to learn some other music programs out there so I can learn other ways of writing stuff. One program that I've really wanted to get into that I tried a long time ago and didn't get super far is FL Studio, which
That's a good
used
one.
to
You could.
be Fruity Loops.
Oh yeah, I was gonna be like, oh, this sounds familiar. Didn't they used to? Yeah. Another one that I would probably recommend only because it's free and I don't know, I'm pretty cheap. I like to go for free stuff is Cakewalk.
Oh, okay, that sounds
They've
familiar, but I don't think I've looked at it recently.
they've got quite a bit of stuff that you can pull and sample from and build from, which is really nice.
I'll have to take a look, especially if it's free. That kind
I
of
love free.
that kind of stuff gets a little tricky when it comes to making like commercially released music and stuff,
Yeah.
since if you're borrowing from libraries that are owned and like publicly available, then it gets a little bit tricky as far as being able to make something that you can sell and monetize.
Yeah.
Another one that I want to learn that I started a while ago is Cubase.
Ooh.
Cubase is pretty common out in electronic music. It's like an industry standard program, and like the full enterprise version is extremely expensive, but the regular one's like less than $100. And I was learning how to write chiptune with it. That's what I wanted to use it
Oh.
for, and I never bought it. I was working with a demo, and
Oh.
then got distracted, and then I started doing all this stuff.
Never came back to it.
N-
No.
no, but I might revisit that at some point because there's a couple of content creators I follow that use that to create some really cool stuff, and a lot of like the RPG inspired things and like quote unquote regular music is really easy to produce in a software like that. I just have to learn.
Ooh.
But that's fine. Looking at the track. Oh, we can talk about the art for this one. The last mecha design that corresponds to track number 10 is this guy right in the foreground. This purple sort of xenomorph, now that I look at it, type of mech with the long
Mm-hmm.
arms. That was not my intent. That I've had that design sitting in my archives for a bit, and I just realized that when I draw it at that angle, it kind of looks a little xenomorphy. But seemed pretty straightforward. Again, just wanted to include the design and thought the color palette stood out from some of the other ones a little bit.
Oh yeah, it does. Especially really nice how you have the eye is the only odd color out, so it draws your eye to its eye.
I wish I could say I did that on purpose, but I'm really not good at color paleting.
Oh, I was gonna say that was a great design choice. It's very much like pulls the eye, and then I was gonna give you the credit for it. You didn't have to say it was random.
Well, I all I did was pick a color that was very different from everything else just to make it contrast.
Hmm.
It wasn't because I knew it was going to draw the eye.
Oh,
I could have said nothing.
yeah, you could have said nothing. Just
No,
rode that wave of highlights.
no, I got to be honest. I'm not really great at paleting. I know how to create palettes that don't clash and look like color vomit, but that's something I'm still learning. Well, I see Iconic's got to take off.
Oh, bye bye.
All right, Iconic, thanks for dropping by and
Nice to meet you too.
hanging out. We're going to be going into the behind the scenes stuff next, but it's all going to be part of the archive broadcast. So
Yeah.
feel so compelled because I think it's going to be more of Mycelia's show on the behind the scenes stuff. So definitely check it out
Oh,
and check her workout as well. It's going to be linked in the stuff I post, but
yes.
give her stuff a look.
I do a lot of hot ladies, and I want to do more mechs. I want to do more mechs.
I will keep that in mind. Yeah, catch you later, my dude. Thanks for tuning in. All right, let me see. I think I've kind of said what I needed to for the track itself. Again, there
Mhm.
will be more drum and bass experiments in the future. I will get better at it, but in the meantime, it's still a work in progress.
No, they're good. Don't downplay it. They're good.
Thank you. I always feel like everything's a work in progress. So
Eventually, everything will stop being a work in progress only when you're dead. Everything at that point from then on, before it, is just a work in progress. It's all great.
I think that's true. And my motto, again, my folks have heard me talk about this before, but my motto is as long as you never stop learning or trying to learn
Mhm.
and improve, because some of the folks in my community have asked about like getting into drawing, which I'm sure your community asks you from time to time,
Yeah,
right?
don't stop. As
How,
soon as you stop and you lose momentum, that's when you fail.
right, and it's always a constant grind, as it were. It's the best way I can describe it, but you have to keep doing it. And
Always.
and I'm guilty because I don't just have one type of medium I stick to, so I have to kind of like rotate between a lot of different things and try and keep sharp at a bunch. But the
And it's
best thing you
okay
could
to
do is just
rotate.
I'm sorry.
Yes, it's okay to rotate through things as long as you are working on something.
Yeah, it's just practice. Do it as much as you can, as long as you enjoy it. That's the other thing. I have some people ask me, and they say, "Well, I want to get into drawing and art, but every time I do it, I don't like it. Like it doesn't."
Yeah, draw fan art. Start with fan art.
Yeah.
Draw something you love. That's the easiest way.
Did you see? This is a slight sidebar, but I think it's a good question. Have you seen the PewDiePie drawing thing he did?
Yes,
I
he's
need
at
to
a.
watch that. I've only seen clips and bits
Oh,
that were
it's
floating
so
around.
good.
It's
I am
crazy
so
though.
proud. Well,
Yeah.
and what's really funny is everybody can do that. It takes consistency. And consistency is the biggest and hardest thing for most people to do. And it's not a ton of time. 10 minutes a day. It's the same with playing a game. If you play a game for 10 minutes a day, you're gonna get super good at it. If you ride a bike 10 minutes a day, you're gonna get super good at it.
Yep. And a lot of it, because I remember when the initial post went up and people were talking about it, and some people were criticizing him and saying, "Well, he's just copying someone else's work." It's
Well,
like,
that's
well,
how all art starts.
yeah, that's exactly how you learn. You use references and things that inspire you to want to emulate, and
Mhm.
then you develop and evolve your own style from that.
Correct. You learn how to do things, how things are supposed to look, and then you modify and you change and you be like, I like this. I really don't like this. I'm never doing it again. And you don't. And you grow from there. Because art school will have you duplicate like pieces from like master works or older works like that, and they'll have you pick like your art mentors or artists that you admire, living or dead, and to reduplicate their works until you master the things that, you've talked about and done a thesis on. And yeah.
Right. It's like the first time you build a house, you're gonna
Yes.
follow a model and probably build a really similar house to something else,
Yes.
but it teaches you all the components that go into building a house. And then after that, after you've built like your fifth house, you start figuring out your own unique way to do it that's going to make it
Hmm.
yours.
And it's never too late to start either,
Yeah.
for either music or art or anything else like that.
And sometimes your house collapses.
Yep.
You
And then
gotta,
you just build it, figure out why it collapsed, and then change it so it doesn't.
yeah, music especially. Again, I'm not a classically trained musician, so like I can't read music effectively. I used to be able to a long time ago,
I
but
feel that.
like I'm not trained in like circle of fifths and all the music theory and, note progressions, harmonies and everything else. So everything I do on projects like this is by ear and it's kind of trial and error.
Hmm.
And I'm sure I don't get it right every single time. Someone who's classically trained with like a perfect pitch ear could probably listen to some stuff and go, "Well, you should have used a flat here instead of a sharp here." But I know enough about music and what it sounds like to get close.
Hmm.
And a lot of it in the tools, again, this is what I've told my community as well. It's just taking the tools and exploring what the tools can do and then just practicing and experimenting.
Yes.
And it's my goal. I'm not trying to change the world with the stuff I make, but my goal is to improve with every project I release and either do something differently or do something better or just build on the previous ones. And like one thing I've told people that I can tell just looking at my stuff, because, as a creator, I'm hypercritical of everything I do. I'm sure you can
Oh
relate.
yeah.
But if I
I was
go
totally.
if I go back and listen to the very first music thing I ever released, which was more just looped beatbox sounds as
Hmm.
opposed to like more fleshed out stuff like this. If I listen to that and I compare it to like this project, it's a big progression of difference.
Huge leap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's not because I just suddenly became like an expert. It's just I learned.
And over
And
time you grew.
yeah. And that's the same with anything. So if you're interested in getting into any sort of creative passion or anything that requires building skill, it doesn't have to be art or music. Just get out there, do
Anything.
it, and keep doing it.
Don't be afraid to fail. You're going to
Yeah.
be bad. Nobody learns to walk the first day.
But that's how you learn. You learn
Yep.
through experimenting in failures and figuring out how to again pick up and do it better. I still suck at drawing hands. I've been drawing for like Jesus, how long been drawing for? I want to say like 35 years. And I
Hands,
still suck at drawing
hands,
hands.
hands flip in and out. They sometimes you love them, sometimes you're like, "Can I just do the old middle school trick where we hide the hands? I don't have to deal with that shit today."
Or circle hands.
Yes.
I know
Little circle hands.
that's a running gag in Wazi's community too, because her style of animation is kind of more cartoonish
Oh, I love that.
and it's very effective. Like again, I would check out her stuff. Her same name on Twitter and YouTube.
Mhm.
But the joke was, well, it's a circle hands day. It's like I've had circle hands
Yes.
weeks.
Sometimes it takes weeks and then you have a day that's like months later and you're like, I have no idea why I had problems with this. I am a master at this. And the next day you're like, oh, but circle today.
I saw a short that someone uploaded for it was something on YouTube. It came across my recommended. It was one of the artists that draws Dragon Ball Z stuff. I mean, one of the
Hmm.
Japanese artists who draws stuff for Dragon Ball Z, and he was doing like a real quick pencil sketch, like a really detailed sketch of I think it was Goku,
Yeah.
but it's like over the shoulder with just him drawing on the paper, and you can see his hand, and he's left-handed for one, which is unusual for artists over there.
Oh, yeah, it
Like
is.
like left-hand artists are rare because they generally try and train that out of people in general. But
Well,
you
it's
see,
easier if you're working in a small cubicle to draw with the opposite hand so you don't bump into the other person.
right. But the thing that's kind of cool about it's like a speed time lapse of him drawing this really intricate sketch. You see
Hmm.
his right hand pop into frame, and you see him using his hand as a reference while he's drawing with his left.
I do that. I have two mirrors, one for facial expressions and one for full body and hand, so I can see it. And sometimes I'll have pictures that I've taken or I've had friends. I'll be like, "Yo, I need you to send me a picture of you in this particular pose," and they're like, "Oh, okay." And then I have it up. I usually don't show those ever on stream, but like I'll
Mm-hmm.
have it on the other side of the screen. And yeah, reference, always reference.
Yeah, that's another good tip for people. Again, we're not doing an art class here, but just from experience, using
100%.
references for specifically for like anatomy and stuff is really useful.
Especially if I'm unable to visualize things. So people are like, close your eyes and picture an apple. I can tell you what an apple is supposed to look like, but I can't visualize it. So I have to use references.
Ah,
And so it's a big thing where people are like, "Oh, that's not creative." I'm like, "Okay, it's there's no harm in looking at references, but I can tell you there's a huge difference and you look at somebody's work and you go, this person worked from references and this person didn't, and I can tell." And there's little tiny details that you don't remember or that you don't see, and that will affect things.
yeah, I think that's definitely valid. I know I don't know if we've talked about this directly, but I tend to be more of a concept artist as opposed to like like a fully fleshed out like
Hmm.
A to Z rendering artist. So that's why I've always said like in stuff I worked on now, I'll do concepts for things and then work with someone who can take that and realize it better than I can, which has worked
And
out good because if I tried to do it myself, it would probably turn out worse.
only because you haven't yet gained the skills to do it.
Yeah. I also suck at backgrounds, but a
That's
bunch of my friends
okay.
have problems with backgrounds too.
Backgrounds are the bane of existence. They're worse than hands.
Yeah. Well, that's why I asked you for this one to
Yeah.
be on top. I was like, could we do like a scene too, in addition to just the character based stuff? And I think the
I was like,
background
yeah.
turned out really well.
I was really happy with it. I actually have it as my desktop right now.
Oh, good.
Yeah. For like the background section. The like not the robot, just the background.
I did find a use for the version you gave me without the mech. It's
Oh,
the
you did?
splash. It's a splash art for the behind the scenes.
Oh, sweet.
So we'll actually see that in just a minute here.
Yes.
And so I guess what we'll do is we'll just kind of do like a final wrap up of notes for the music portion.
Hmm.
If you have any final thoughts, I'll just say that again. I've only done one other electronic type of album, and that one was fun too. But I feel like I'd learned more and applied it to this one. So the next one should be
It's
even
so
better.
good. 100%. Listen to it with headphones, chat. You need to, please. It's so good.
That's something I didn't think to mention because normally I don't get a lot of feedback from stuff that people are listening to.
Hmm.
But I think for a lot of the effects, and that makes sense for some of the other stuff I've done recently too. You probably be able to hear a lot of little effects if you're listening with headphones.
Oh yeah, headphones are all so good for this one because you can hear, especially when you have the effects where it goes from side to side for the audio tracking is oh God, that's so good. Ah, it's so good. Headphones needed.
One thing that I did want to mention on the production side, because again, I'm still learning mixing and audio production. I had this problem with a bunch of the releases I did in 22 where because of the way I recorded them from my synthesizer sounds going from synthesizer to my loop station, because
Hmm.
it's using aux, it's an aux just an aux plug that's taking the sound from the keyboard and the loop is recording it with the input being aux. there
Mhm.
was feedback, like a little bit of
Oh.
feedback. So some of my older tracks, you can hear it. There's like a little bit of a like a hiss in the back. And the more
Well, then
lo-fi
it's
ones,
just a retro filter then.
oh yeah, yeah, no,
Intentional.
I'm not gonna pretend that that was something I intended to do. Some of the more lo-fi-ish ones, it doesn't
It-
sound as distracting.
yeah.
But I think I've found the solution to that, and that's recording the synthesizer input louder, so
Oh,
that
that could work. You may also have to check to make sure that you don't have any signal leakage from the aux cord itself and to potentially replace it because it might actually be going bad.
that's something I didn't think about that I'll have to check. I've used a couple different chords, and that problem was not really something I could fix, but I will keep that in mind because there's a setting. Again, I'm not going to get too technical because people fall asleep, but the loop station itself has a noise floor setting,
Hmm.
which if you set it a certain way, it basically nullifies things below a certain, I think it's like a decibel level or noise threshold, and that filtered out a bunch of that. But
Oh,
if I record everything a lot louder, then when I put it over into post editing, then I can drop the volume down as opposed to having it really low and having to boost it up, and then you hear that feedback amplified. So recording louder allows me to drop the volume down to standardized levels, and then if that feedback was present, it's basically drowned out because it's dropped down.
yeah, because I know I've ran into a lot of signal leakage issues with a bunch of HDMIs, and I have had it happen with headphones that are like going out or aux cords that are going out. And usually you have to use like Faraday tape for like an HDMI or potentially um like those big blocks that you see on cords,
Mm-hmm.
like the big circular cylinder things. Those are signal dampeners. So you sometimes
Oh,
you can find those for different chords and that can help sometimes too.
oh, that's good to know.
Yeah.
I'll have to look into that. I haven't had issues with it recently, which is why I brought it up. But
Oh.
I'm paranoid about sound, anything I do. And so like again, for folks who are watching this now and might be checking out the tracks on like streaming later, if you hear something in what I've made, and I'm not really sensitive when it comes to stuff like that. If I've recorded something, you're like, hey, is this effect in here intentional or whatever, and you ask me, it's much better if I know something because again, I listen to these tracks so much as I'm producing and getting them ready that I stop being able to hear a lot of the nuances of stuff like that. So again, for you and anyone else who uses my stuff, if you hear something you're like, was that intentional? Just ask me. I'm not gonna get offended and be like, oh, don't question my pro. No, I'm always trying to figure out how to improve stuff, and if I can't physically hear it because I'm just used to it.
Because you zone it out. It's the same thing where if you draw and you flip the canvas and you haven't flipped the canvas in a while, your brain has gotten used to how things look. And then, whoa.
I know exactly what you're talking about. I've talked about that too. I,
Because
I
your
try
brain
and do
overlooks
it
it.
periodically as if I'm drawing something, anything, especially faces, and nothing makes me want to just jump out a window more than when I'm working on something for a long time. Like, oh, I haven't flipped my canvas in like an hour. I'll
Yeah.
flip it now and then. Oh, the face is clearly lopsided.
Ugh. Yeah, you're like, oh, that eye's gonna fall out of its socket.
Mm. And people have asked me, well, why does it matter? I said, well, if someone else takes my image and flips it and sees it, then
Then they see it.
then they see it. Yeah,
Exactly.
I'll know.
Yeah.
It'll keep me up at night. It's funny.
It's the exact same thing. Because eventually you tune it out. That's why, like, even with writing, you proofread and then you change the font into like Comic Sans or something different, and then reread it again. Your brain will catch more issues with things because it's different and your brain isn't glazing over stuff.
Oh yeah, it follows the same type of rationale. And in my regular 9 to 5 job, I have to do a lot of like writing and editing type stuff for
Oof.
text. And what I always tell people I work with, I say, if you got this thing that you're writing and it's really detailed and has a bunch of stuff in it, before you send it off somewhere, just sit on it. Like
Yeah.
again, keep in mind your deadlines and all that stuff. But if you got something before you ship it off, and I do it with my stuff too, I'll just put it down and go do something else. Like move on to the next project for like half a day or even a day overnight, and look at what I did with fresh eyes the next day, and stuff just jumps right out at you.
Yeah.
You're like, oh,
And you're like, oh no.
and it's like a self editing thing that'll allow you to catch a lot of mistakes. Same with art. I do it with music too. Like I record something, and before I hook up all my computer equipment to pull stuff into formal recording, I'll say I'm gonna go back to that track that I put together, and then oh nope, it was completely out of key. Time
Oh
time to go back and
no.
redo it and fix it. But you listen to it for an hour on end, and like you said, you just get desensitized.
Yeah.
And so yeah, let stuff marinate for a bit. It'll help you catch things.
Then come back to it.
Yep. Just manage your time accordingly.
Yes.
All right. Well, again, we're pushing 3 hours, so let's move on to behind the scenes.
Alrighty.
So I have this one queued up already. I'll just start from the beginning. So for folks again who jumped on since we started, this is a combination of footage that I got from Mycelia on the album art,
Mhm.
drawing, and concept development. So what we're gonna do, this is a 7-minute video, so it's not super long. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put the video on, let it run start to finish. I'm gonna go refill my water bottle while this is going, and then afterwards we'll stop and we'll kind of jump through the different sections to talk about the different portions. Mostly going to hand the mic off to Mycelia to kind of go through stuff that she worked on in developing the album art.
I will say there is a point where I have like blacked it from my memory and don't remember it when I watch back through it. So I'll go over it when we get there. You can go ahead and play it.
Okay, yeah, and when we come back, if you want me to try and like jump to a certain point, let me know. I will say that I sped your footage up a little bit
Okay.
because it with the original one was I think around 20 minutes ish,
Yeah, it was
and
pretty long.
I shrunk it down to about 8 minutes. Or, no, this whole thing is 7 minutes. So I shrunk it down by almost 3/4. So it's gonna go fast, but just let
Okay.
me know if you want me to jump to a certain point, and I can do it.
Yeah, no, you're fine.
Hey, Sour Lad's here. What's up, Sour Lad? Sour Lad is one of the regulars and one of my mods.
Hey.
He's a very hardworking fellow who also mods for Wazi and the Toxic Cure community, which is probably way more work trying to manage the shenanigans there. But welcome, Sour Lad. I don't know what point you jumped on, but we just went through the tracks for the new album release, and we are switching gears now to go through some behind the scenes stuff. My co-host is Mycelia Corpus, and she did the art. So
Yay!
this is her footage from drawing and some concept work, and I'm gonna let it play like I mentioned, and we'll talk about it. So feel free to tune in and vibe. So let's see. This should be queued up. Oh, why is this 360? Oh, not 360p. Good lord.
360p.
I don't.
Yeah, I get to see all 7 pixels.
Oh, terrible. All right. I am gonna go on mute real quick and refill my water while this is running, and then we will reconvene after it's done.
Okay.
All right. That was the behind the scenes footage. So what I'll do is
Yeah.
I'm gonna pause and just let me know where you want me to jump around to in the video
I
for stuff to reference.
So go to the beginning where where it's not the beginning, near the end where it shows the initial concepts. Yeah. So each of the concepts has a different theme to it. So I have a couple of them. The first one was based more off of an anglerfish because I wanted to keep the very iconic shape of Tenpo, and I didn't want to break it up, but I wanted it to feel a little bit more animalistic and a little bit more biomechanical. And so I played around with first the anglerfish, and then after that is actually one that's like looks a little bit more like a penguin for like version 2. So you can go ahead and let it hit play. And
Jump
I
here.
had an option of like the inner cockpit being open and stuff like that. And then the next one after that, version 3, I was like, well, let's try making it bipedal. And so I wanted to have the top really heavily mimic headphones, and I wanted a little bit more exposed skeleton and some of the a little bit more exaggerated things. And then the final version, which is the version we ended up, was actually based off of a shark.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a total fluke of a design because I didn't initially think of it until, oh God, I think it was like a commercial or something had come on with like a shark that I was listening to on YouTube that had a shark in it. I was like, wow, that looks really nice with the high fin. I was like, well, I could pull in Tempo's design from there. And so I just ripped his mouth open for and elongated him even more and stretched them all out, and that's the one we went with. Oh, and I did also, each mech had like a different pilot suit that
Yes.
designed with it as well, which was a lot of fun. And I feel bad because I actually did a ton more than this, but these were the ones I liked the best. I'm really glad with the one we chose
This is
because
kind of showing off, yeah, what
my
Mycelia's talking about. The
my
costume,
head's in the way.
yeah. Oh, yeah, you're fine. You
Like,
can still see it a little bit. The color paletting and the outfit is different on the pilot suit as well for each of these concepts.
correct. Each one of them has little differences. Some of them are a little bit more armored. Some of them are more gray. There's one of them, the second one, the penguin one, this one here, where it has like a different like plug suit option sections that I had thought about putting in there for it, which is gonna be really fun. And yeah. I had first initially sent you version 4, and you were like, "Oh, I like this one." He's like, "But can we have more like the holographic tail stuff from like version 2?" And I was like, "Oh, yes, I can do that." And so we added more highlights in, and the tails became holographic plasma looking, and then I worked out the poses as well. I love that you had put those in there. I was like, "Oh man, it's been a little bit since I've looked at these," but yeah, we did a couple different poses because I initially started sketching and I was roughing it out and I was like, oh damn, but there are so many different styles of mechs. I was like, first we need to settle on a style of mech and then we can do the pose. Because initially I was trying to do the pose and it just wasn't working because I had so many different mech ideas. And yeah, the first one was really fun. I had like the helmet busted, and there was going to be like I was gonna try and talk you into putting blood coming down the out of the helmet with it, but
Oh yeah, oh, you mean
we
for the pilot himself?
yeah, for the pilot. And then there was another one that I don't think made it to you, where I actually had set it up where it was the pilot had been impaled by something had come through the robot. But that one got nixed pretty early on. I was like, I don't think I can convince anyone else to do heavy gore on an album cover, so that one got axed really fast.
Interesting idea. Might be a little bit
Yeah,
tough as far as like the
for
YouTube side.
censoring. Yeah, that's why it got axed. I was like, it's a cool idea, but can't happen. And then, if you'd like, we can go all the way back to the beginning of it. So after we had chosen the pose and everything else, that's when I had set it up and I started initially out on stream and I was like, okay, chat, we're gonna do the easy stuff. And I started right away with your face. and the like the pilot. And of course, through the entire course of this, chat didn't know who it was for, didn't know what it was for. I said we called it the mech and the mecha and the pilot. And so if I slip back into that, it's because I've had to force myself to just do that. So I was like, we're gonna do the easy stuff first, human first, and then we'll move on to the really fun stuff. So went through and I sketched and solidified those details pretty quickly. I didn't have too much trouble with it. And then you can skip forward a little more. And oh, the cockpit. Okay, yeah, go right there for the cockpit. So I have the full line art for the cockpit, which includes tempo like decal on the seat. I have the full line art for it sitting in a folder because like this is so cool. And while I was working on this, I think you had rated me at some point and I had said, if anybody knows who this is, don't say it in chat. You can DM me and I will neither confirm nor deny, but don't say anything in chat because I was so worried. I was like, oh my god, Tempo is very iconically shaped. I was like, fuck, this is gonna give it away. I'm gonna be somebody's gonna call me out. It's supposed to be sort of secrecy. But yeah, so and so I was like, oh, I don't have to worry about it because the pilot covers it up anyway. You can go ahead and keep going in a little bit, and then I focused a little bit more on the body and everything else like that. I had a pretty solid idea because I had sketched stuff out previously. I was like, oh yeah, this is for sure what's gonna be. And I did have to go back through later and fix the hips because they were sitting off just a little bit for me. And when I came back and looked at it, and I was like, oh, I gotta fix that, change it, and moved the pistons over so it felt a little bit more wide versus how thin it was feeling at first. I'm sorry, some of this right around I think when I started doing the flats is where I was like, I don't remember any of this because coloring is my chill brain turn off session.
Mm-hmm. I
So
hear that.
that's the point where I'm like, I just can't think of anything. But line art is my favorite, and gosh, working with line art for Mecha is just so nice. If you don't like line art, start with something that you really, really like, and then do the line art for that, and that will help diminish some of that hatred for it just a little bit.
One thing I noticed as you know we're going through the footage, I did watch it through and I edited this, but
Hmm.
there is a staggering amount of detail on the cockpit.
I put a ton in it.
Like it's a little bit
There's
tough to
there's
see in the final version of the album art because again I had to scale everything. But when you actually zoom in and look at everything that's designed around like the inner chamber of the mech, and we'll get to it as it kind of gets realized here and some stuff I didn't even
yeah.
notice the first time I wanted to point out, but like I could
Uh,
see the amount of work that went into that. It's crazy.
Yeah, well, there were certain points too where I was like, chat, we're doing this, and I'm really zoomed in. Nobody's gonna see this except us, but this is because it's cool. I'm doing this. So there's levers, there's buttons. It has like sliding handles like from Big O.
Oh, really?
And yeah. So do you know how his console unit has like he has the upright consoles joysticks, but they slide. They're like on sliders. And so
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
first whole section of the console sliders, and then I also have other detailing on like the windows and stuff like that too.
I did
And then
notice
so
that.
I started working on the background here because the backgrounds take me the longest. So I started on it. And in I was going through and I was like, well, okay, so let's throw out some silhouettes of buildings in the background. I was like, the green splotch was an accident, and I was like, well, now it's a portal or something like that. And then I did planets, and it's sad at the end you can't really see a whole lot of these planets. I was really proud of these with their little moons, but things come and things go, and they hint and peek through the clouds a little bit, but not as much as like when I first started. And I debated on doing a little bit more rubble, and I had checked back in with you because I was like, oh wait, I didn't even check to see like what kind of building structure we wanted, and I had sent you, I think a screenshot or two. I think it was about here. And I was like, do you want me to change these? Are these okay? And you were like, oh yeah, that's fine. And we talked about colors and changed some of those around. So rather than, I think I had started with like reds and like brick colors. and we changed it to more like silvers and grays and stuff like that.
Yeah, I
And
think we were
then
talking about how the base like sample image I used for the teaser had like
yes.
that blue and green color palette.
Yeah, and I tried to pull that in then a little bit more, and I was like, oh, I gotta match that a little bit. And I went through and I was trying to figure out like some of the rubbling and the destruction and the fire ended up being like really crazy. And at first it was too huge and I dropped it down and then I threw this little mech into it and I was like, yeah, I like that mech sitting there in the fire. And you can't even see it in the ending portion, but I really like some of the smaller details in here. And then I did the flats for the robot.
This is the one you're
Yeah,
talking
right
about.
there. Yeah, that little guy right there. I just threw him in there. It's like perfect. Now you're stuck in there. But yeah, I did the flats and I initially started out I was like, okay, chat, all we're doing is we're doing just flats today. So we went through and we did the flats. I think right about there. And then inside the cockpit, if you go right there where you are and then just a little bit back, and you can see me put the concept artwork into the cockpit
You're talking
where
about this stuff
heads
right here.
yeah, the stuff up there. So that one is the one we chose. The one next to it is actually the pilot suit. And then the one next to that I think is like the version 3 or something like that. And then it has like a bunch of scribbles and stuff on it, which you can't see because it's really condensed and really small and some of the lighting blows it out. But if anybody wanted to look at it, there is stuff there and it does have like little nods to some of the past things.
Yeah, and this is what I was talking about when I was editing and looking at the footage really closely and seeing it like component by component. This
Yeah.
stuff here on the monitors in the back is what I noticed because at first I thought it was just shading, and then I looked at it, it's like no, those are supposed to be like schematics for the
Yeah.
mechs that are in there. That's an insane level of detail that
And I
again it's easy
think
to
it
miss.
yeah, it's really easy missing, especially when I start layering on some like the coloring and some of the highlights and the glows. It kind of washes stuff out. But I think there's like a health bar, and there's a couple alert pops up for like the mecha too, indicating like damage or issues with low power or something. I think is what I had put on there. Some of it's really jumbled, and some of it I was like, throw it on there. Look like some kind of battle component layout thing because I was thinking about doing a whole different um setup in there where I was going to be like, oh, I'll put something like that as a nod, like a list of all the songs. And I was like, nah, because you're not going to really see it. So something I don't have to do too much into. And then I went too much effort into it anyway. So I should have just done the songs.
Part of me wants to do like an alternate version of this art that's like a close up of just like from here zoomed in so that you can see more detail on the pilot and then the interior of the mech. I just don't know what
I
I
mean,
would.
I have a high I have the ability to really zoom in and export that. I could do it now if you
I'm trying to
needed
think
it
of what I
to.
would do with it though. Like there's no way for me to do alternate cover art.
Now you can just have it. You don't have to do anything with
Yeah.
it.
I don't know. I'm making the pilot head my Twitter avatar once we're done.
Do it. Do it. I was really happy with like how your suit and everything turned out, and I was like, ah, yes. I did have a little bit of a time though where I was going over and I was doing the gold edging for stuff, and I was like, I do not like this, and I think I did it like 5 or 6 times, and then finally I was like, okay, we're doing it one more time, and then I'm going to bed, and I did it the last and final time, and I was like, this came out and so nice. Came back to it the next day and said, now we're getting rid of it and doing it again. So you never know when you come back and look at something if you're going to change it or not.
Yeah, I think
And then,
the end result is I think pretty good because it's on model color palette wise for
yeah.
with my regular VTuber model. There's more white, but like everything else, like the dark grays, the golds, and everything, and like the kind of teal highlights.
Oh, I pulled it all directly from your model. I was like, I'm going to pull this color here. And I had actually paletted out your coloration for your model and then for tempo stuff too. I also had his stuff pulled up and then I had references for You know those like metallic glitter paint jobs they do for cars where it color shifts from like one color to the other?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I had done references for that as well for some of the metal structure for the armor on your shoulders. Has like a purple sheen and stuff to it, which works out really well with the blue light and the red reflections that would happen. So it came out really nicely. And then the like the orangey red stuff for Tempo's armor, the red lacquer section was really that was also a kind of a challenge. I think if you go forward just a little bit more, when I'm working, I think I do a little bit more work on the background, and I think I put in a bunch of windows and I bust them all up,
Let's see.
and yeah,
Oh, here we go. Here we
yeah,
go.
yeah. Here where I roughed out the mechas in the background, and I was putting in windows and I was busting them all up. And I think it was during the course of this, yeah, there's a ship up in the top, and I played around with the ship idea for a little bit, and I was like, I feels like it pulls too much up, that there's not enough space for any title card or anything, so I just eventually nixed it. And it changes colors a little bit, but it disappears.
That's probably a good idea in the end because my logo goes in that corner.
Right there.
So
Yeah.
yeah, it would have obscured everything there, and you wouldn't be able to see it.
Would have pulled it out 100%. And then if we go forward a little bit more, and then I clean it up. Oh, so for the foreground and the closer stuff, I have a bunch of pins that I use for gribbling. So gribbling is when you take like a 3D object or something, you add just texture and junk to it to give it gribble. Is so it's a old term from Star Trek where they first met uh the Borg and they gribbled the cubes so they looked interesting. They added texture. So I had a whole bunch of that and I threw it down and I was gonna change it all up and I was like, but that actually looks really good. So I didn't. So it's just a whole bunch of gobbledygook of destruction.
I was wondering how you
And
did
then
that. I wasn't sure if
yeah,
it was all assets you created from scratch and then layered into like a composited
some of them were,
piece.
some of them were things that I had done that I had made into a pin because you can do a sketch or a drawing and you can make it into a pin stamp thing. And then a couple of them were assets from Clip Studio that were community made that they're like, take it, use it. I don't have any need of this. And I was like, cool, is this cool? And they're like, yeah, whatever. And I was like, oh, okay. So that added all in and then I smushed everything together and colored and highlighted and messed it all up so it looked all dirty and yeah.
The lower focus of the closest layer to the camera is a good touch too. Like
It's
a
my favorite because it pulls you in and it makes you feel like you're a part of the scene, but there's still a distance between you and the mech, and it creates the sense of something over there. There's a great distance, so it might be bigger than anticipated.
yeah, it's like actual depth,
Yes,
just like you would
and
see in a camera lens where it focuses on the more further back object, which causes the foreground objects to come out of focus.
yeah, and it feels like it pushes the mech back a little bit as well, so he doesn't feel like he's smushed right up against the foreground, which gives a little bit of space and everything else like that. And I had gone back through and I had re-cleaned up the little mechs in the back. And I think it was at that point where I was like, okay, here's this. And I had sent you just the background, and you had gone over and you were like, oh, I was like, I really like the background. Is there a way we can do it without the mech? Because we had talked about it earlier. And I was like, oh, yeah, that's still possible. We can still for sure do that. And then I was like, oh, I really like the background for sure. It came out really nice.
Yep, that's how we got the
The
main
beginning
splash here.
pieces. And I'm
And
so glad I went through and I cleaned up the little mechs on the roof and everything else like that too. So good.
I did
I was very
notice.
happy.
I don't know if this was intentional. Let me see if I can get like a side by side. Are the mechs in the background supposed to be the same model as the one we see in
Yes.
the foreground? Okay,
But
looks
they
like
they
a
are slightly different. They have like different structures. Like the one on the far left-hand side has a really it has a different I think the front section almost has like a skirt piece. And then I had tried to do a larger gun on one of them. It doesn't read very well, so they ended up kind of reading more samey. But do you notice the one in the middle does not have the the note tail on the
Yeah,
back?
because my read on the overall scene is like this
Hmm.
is a squad,
Yeah, it
and this
feels
is
like squad for sure.
the aftermath is what happened with like some of the squad is obviously down or dead,
Yeah,
but we're seeing like the main. I don't know if this is I set up to be like the
could
leader
be
or
the
just
main
a member, but like
surveillance,
yeah, exactly.
maybe a
So
check for survivors.
it's like not just this character and his mech. There's also others that were part of this.
Yes.
And this version is not the one that's scaled down in the final, right? This one,
No, this is the full version that we worked on for a while, and that's what we stayed with. And then as we were going through, and you were like, "Oh, I need a place for my logo," and I said, "Well, let me try and minimize it, small him down, minimize him, so we can see how it looks." And then we shrunk him down a little bit, and was like, "Yeah, that's it. We like the smaller size. It pulls a little bit more focus down and gives you an area for the logo and stuff."
yep, and also the title, the
Yes.
album title, which that took a little bit of tinkering. I know when we were talking about it, just for folks who are watching this, I'm not a font expert by any means, and I've yet to meet someone who specializes in like font design and title work. And I would say
It's
like
one of
if
those
sorry.
It's one of those things that's hard to find somebody who's really good at it.
Oh yeah, and I've told everyone I work with just to kind of get the word out. It's like if you know anyone who specializes in like title font logos or types of stuff like that, give me their information because I'd love to get in contact with someone that I can hire to do like my album titles
Yes.
because that's such a specific but it's such a cool aspect of the overall piece.
Mm-hmm. And it can either like just distract or it can really help like the overall presence of everything. But oh, I do have to laugh. So when I was going through and I was doing the white parts for like the really light white silvery parts for the coloration for the main mech, I used white as the base and then I had to go back through and I had to add purple and blue and a bunch of other colors in there. And somebody in my chat was like, why didn't you just start with a different color? I was like, well, white shows up the best and it does make it harder to shine, but it really helps when I play other colors against it a lot. So some of the stuff that looks one specific color is for sure not.
Is it different layers of transparency when you're putting
Yes.
down? Yeah, okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah, there's in just the white there is blue, indigo, purple, teal, a lot of yellow, and there's actually like a green chartreuse, like the really green.
I
And then
real quick, we got a
in
stretch reminder from Sour Lad.
oh yeah, we got to stretch. And it's really fun to play around with like the really light blue tealy lighting and then how it would look reflected off of the different surfaces. I love reflections, man. That's the best part.
Yeah, that's really well done, and I say that as a person again who sucks with lighting and lighting effects.
Took
Putting
a long
the
time.
like the glow and then how the glow reflects off of the adjacent parts, so you can kind of see it reflected in like a highlight,
Hmm.
and things like the interior of the pilot chamber and like the glow from screens. Like the ambient lighting is really well done.
I'm
That's
glad
not
because
easy to
it took
do.
a while.
So kudos on that.
That's one of the sections where I was like, chat, I can't do this on stream. I have to do this off stream because I can't talk. I have to focus. I have to shut off my brain and go monkey mode and just be like color, light and color only.
That makes
But
sense.
yeah, that was it. Much less structured than oh, and then there was a point where I was like, how dirty do you want to be? And I had sent you a couple shots of you with varying different levels of like dirt splashed on you and then a couple varying levels of dirt splashed on the mech and scuffs and just all kinds of little tiny details that
Yeah, I think
Look good.
it's a good kind of middle ground because I was trying to think what made the most sense as far as that level of detail that's not going to be distracting.
Yeah.
Because if the mech is too like scuffed and like muddied and burned and damaged, then it's going to distract away from all of the other parts. You know, being able to have the eye wander, but also see like, oh, look at all the levels of complexity in the joints. Look at the
Yes.
level of complexity in the cockpit and like everything else in the background.
Mhm.
So I think the middle ground ended up being good, just so it doesn't like draw the eye to just one thing. You can see all
Oh
the other
yeah, and I
parts.
tried to make sure there were as many parts that were as curved as possible, and then I threw in a couple of straight sections in there, and I was like, yeah, just a little bit.
Yeah, I think it
Yeah,
came together well.
yeah, I was pretty happy with the end result. I was like, oh, this is nice. It's been a while since I've had an ability to do mecha because most people just want pretty ladies. Don't get me wrong, I draw really pretty ladies, but that's not it's not my favorite thing to draw.
Well, it's good.
That was it.
Well, great. I think we can get ready to start wrapping up. Again, I wanted to
Yep.
make sure you had the opportunity to throw in whatever explanations and stuff for the behind the scenes and the art, since I yacked about music for the vast majority of the stream today.
Well, the music was the focus, so it's okay.
But I think what we'll do, actually, let's do this. I did say that at the beginning we kind of talked a little bit about your work and everything, but as a way to wrap up, especially for folks who jumped in midstream, if you want to take a minute to plug all of your work and stuff, and just again give chat an overview about like what kind of stuff you work on, content
Oh,
wise
yeah.
and additional. The floor is yours, and I'm gonna look and see who we can potentially raid while you're doing that.
Okay. Well, I tend to do a lot of for generally for art, I do a lot of character design. I've done a couple of VTuber models, mainly my own, and only a couple of kids. Um, I do a lot of portrait work, PNG work. I do like the PNG Plus. Also Live 2D. I'm working on offering Live 2D commissions and stuff like that. I tend to do a lot of a heavy chunk of my week for when I go stream is art, and chunk of that is usually Final Fantasy. Some of the older games, we're going back through and replaying them, and collabs. I do a lot of collabs. I'm a chatty Cathy.
I did see when we had the shout out earlier that your last stream thing was FF14.
It was. It was Final Fantasy 14.
That
Uh,
tracks.
We we played through all of it because I don't know. I'm weird about playing online games, and they were like, "Well, I'll play it with you," and I was like, "Oh, okay." 2 years later, and I was like, "Oh, my God, this is so long." So don't get into 14 unless you have lots of time.
Yep, that's why I haven't. If you
But
want to see the
I
discussion
do,
we had earlier in the stream about the time commitment
yes,
of MMOs and video games, go check out the
huge,
archives.
huge time commitment.
Yeah.
But I will say during my art streams, I do always recommend people to come by, stop by. If you have questions about Clip Studio or like DreamerBot or OBS, I don't mind explaining it. I frequently do art classes and stuff like that anyway, so yeah.
Oh, perfect. And like I mentioned before, I'll be linking to Mycelia's stuff in the YouTube posts for both the main video for the album and the behind the scenes. So you'll be able to check out her stuff there, or or over on Twitter, or refuse to call the platform X.
It's Twitter.
Well, great. I did find someone to raid. One of my VTuber peers, B
Sweet.
Takahashi, is Pokemoning yet again. So we can go ahead and send everybody there.
Alrighty, remember, listen to the album with headphones.
That's right. I'll try to remember to encourage people to do that too. But
Okay.
let me click this stuff over here. Go to outro. And before we raid, just a real quick wrap up for next week. This is gonna be the last stream for a little bit because I am going on a trip next week. I will be out of town for a couple weeks. I will be in Japan.
Ooh.
And in the meantime, I am working on some stuff between now and when I leave that's going to be on YouTube. This is just some kind of stuff I had mentioned in my community earlier. I'm going to be trying to finish editing and uploading stuff that I can schedule to go live on. And there'll be some videos that I've filmed and put together. If you're familiar with the series Has Been Hotel, which is very, very much getting a lot of press right now. That's what they're going to be about.
Ooh.
Have you seen Has Been Hotel, Mycelia?
I have.
Okay. I have a lot of opinions and thoughts. So the video is going to be about that, which some people will probably find interesting. But in the meantime, I'll be out around. I just won't be streaming for a couple weeks after today. But thanks to everyone who stopped by to check out the album and talk with us. Special thanks to Mycelia for jumping on and helping me co-host. I know we've been going for almost 4 hours, but a lot of interesting
okay.
discussion.
Thank you for inviting me.
That being said, again, everyone has a good night. Now let's go see what B is doing in the realm of Pokemon. So let me cue the raid. And as soon as I send this over there, we will wrap up.
Woo.
All right, there it goes. So I'll catch you folks later. Have a good evening.